Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Take a seat. Axios AI Summit in D.C. is about to begin.
Technology correspondent at Axios. And if you're looking to keep tabs on the very fast-moving world of AI, whether it's the latest breakthroughs or the impact on business, on policy, or just everyday life, subscribe to our Axios AI Plus newsletter at axios.com. And you can join us in person December 3rd in San Francisco, my hometown, for our Axios AI Plus Summit.
Here's the twist.
Introducing Axios co-founder and CEO Jim VandeHei and Axios Chief Technology Correspondent Ina Fried.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ina.
I'm Jim VandeHei. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Axios. This guy was sitting in the same seat yesterday, I think. We're doing 3 days this year. We're really grateful to our sponsors for making it happen. We think this is the most important topic in the most important city. Axios is a publication. We write a lot about the regulation, the implementation, the technology behind artificial intelligence. I think it's going to be the most important story of our generation. To be honest, I'm kind of shocked that other publications don't put more energy and more interest into it. I think the reason you're in the room is you're like us. You realize what's unfolding in real time, really generational change. The cool thing for me as a CEO is we're able to write about it. We talk to the AI companies all the time. We're talking to the Trump administration and Congress about the regulatory sides of it. But we're probably in the upper 2 to 5% of companies utilizing the technology in real time. We're looking at every different part of the company to automate basically everything other than the journalism, or augment everything other than the journalism. And so this conversation today fits beautifully into it. I think there's a lot of excitement in Washington, a lot of fear often around AI in Washington. And the cool thing about having Ina, who lives on the other coast, is Ina can tell you about the excitement in almost the parallel universe of what it's like to live in San Francisco, where people aren't sleeping because they see nothing but golden opportunity.
Well, I have to say, I spend all my time writing about AI, but I don't talk about AI as much as Jim VandeHei. Like, he is so into this technology, and I've been here since we started, and I have never seen Jim. What is it about the promise of AI that has you so energized?
I mean, just as someone, this is the first, I always say that this is the first technology that speaks Jim. Like, I didn't know anything about Python and Ruby on Rails and all the other weird stuff that technologists use to build things, so I was useless when it came to technology, but this technology speaks English. If you know how to speak about intent, about context, what you're trying to do, someone like me can build an app in the next 30 minutes. That's crazy. And so you start to think about that as an entrepreneur, having started a couple companies. You can envision all these magical ways that it can change a business, and I think allow us to grow a business. And make no mistake, we'll talk about it at this conference, there's going to be pain. I think there's a lot of jobs that probably go away because of AI. I think almost every industry, every job, every business will change fundamentally more in the next 2 to 3 years than they did in the previous 10 to 15. Like, I'm not underselling that. That's real. But as somebody who has to run a company, and you have to go into the war with the sort of the team in the landscape that you have, this is the landscape. And so we see a lot of opportunity.
For me, the thing that stands out is just the pace. I mean, I've been in San Francisco covering Silicon Valley since the dot-com revolution, but a bunch of those earlier tech things were really a big idea that then took several years to implement. What shocks me every week is how fast the underlying technology is changing. You know, we were talking about OpenClaw, and then everyone in the industry kind of came up with their answer to OpenClaw. So Claude has its computer, Perplexity has personal computer. So I think that's really exciting, but as someone who's trying to build on top of the technology, it must be hard to decide what we're going to build on top of when that ground keeps shifting every week.
Yeah, it's funny, I just, before I came here, I was in a meeting with sort of our AI specialist internally, and I was asking, what are the new problems that are being created? And they said in the last month, the biggest problem is you can build so many things so fast that you way outpace every other part of the company, including the people that have to make sure that it's safe before you release it. So you end up with this new backlog that never happened before. Well, that's going to happen in every single division of every single company. And even the type of brain you're going to need to be able to thrive in this environment, it's going to switch a little bit. Like, if you are really good at giving context, if you understand the intent of what you're trying to do, if you're really good at communicating both to a model and to other people, you're going to be exponentially more valuable than you were before. And what we tell everyone is, listen, like, the easiest way to reduce the fear level with AI is to figure out, how can I take this technology and be the absolute best at utilizing it for what I do? If you do that, you'll be fine. If you don't do that, you might be screwed.
Well, Jim and I could talk about AI all day, but we have a whole bunch of other people we want to bring on. A few housekeeping things. We have some great guests. So we have Meta's Dina Powell McCormick, Michael Kratsios from the White House, Constellation CEO Joe Dominguez. If you want to follow along, whether you're joining us via Zoom or in the room, thank you. And you can use the hashtag Axios AI Summit to continue the conversation on social. For those in the room, we're going to have programming for a couple hours, and then we'll have a networking reception after that goes until 7:30. As you might have heard from the video, we have 2 more Axios Summits coming up later this year. June 3rd will be in New York. December 3rd will be in San Francisco. Without further ado, let's get the show going.
Thank you all.
Dina Powell McCormick operates at the nexus of global power and tech. As president and vice chairman of Meta, she helps steer one of the world's most influential AI companies through intensifying regulation, geopolitics, and platform accountability. A former senior White House official and Wall Street executive, she brings rare fluency across Washington and Silicon Valley as AI policy heats up in 2026.
Thank you for joining Axios AI Plus DC. I'm Mike Allen, co-founder of Axios. Dina Powell McCormick, Madam President.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
So one of our special guests today, Autumn Hannah VandeHei. You've been friends for how long?
Well, we've been friends for 30 years. We met when we were 8 years old. Very young. No, we were roommates here in D.C. She brought home a guy named Jim VandeHei. And let's just say we weren't as warm and fuzzy as we are now towards Jim.
So, Dina, you're just back from the White House. There was a humanoid robot in the East Room. This was the First Lady, other First Ladies. What did you learn at the White House today? And tell us about the humanoid robot who was multilingual, and it was a she.
It was a she, yes. Yeah, I literally just came from the White House. The First Lady had an event with almost 50 other First Ladies in town. All of them really focused on making sure their country isn't left behind, particularly with education and the use of AI. Apparently, it was the first time a humanoid robot had gone to the White House. A friend that was there who was involved in getting the robot there said the Secret Service was a little hesitant at first. And when it started coming at me, I understood why. It spoke many, many languages, and it was a she because she's actually a teacher. And particularly in countries where there's a dearth of teachers, they believe one day humanoid robots will play a really big role.
Dina, you're 2 months into your role as president and vice chairman. Your first interview was week 1 in Davos with Axios at Axios House. What have you learned in those 2 months? You're the ultimate inside outsider because you were on Meta's board, but now that you've transitioned to the leadership team, you go to the Meta executive page, there you are right under Mark Zuckerberg. What have you learned about AI transformation that would surprise our audience today?
Sure. I think I've learned that Meta AI, which I can speak for, Meta AI is really focused on people, not products. And I'll give you just a few examples. This morning, you scooped that we launched a big initiative company-wide today called Meta Small Business. It's bringing together across the board all of the products and technologies that we use to serve small businesses. Over 300 million small businesses today use a Meta platform to run their business. And we want to make sure that they accelerate their AI usage. Sadly, today small businesses are one of the last groups to fully use and embrace AI. We want to make sure that they do that to create more jobs and to have impact in their communities. The second, of course, is what we like to call the workforce of America. When we talk about America and how critical it is that we're competitive in the AI race, we need a whole new workforce. Just in the next 2 years, 500,000 electricians are needed to build all the infrastructure that's going to be needed just in the United States. And so we talk about it as the workforce of America because if you're competing on behalf of America, these are the real heroes that are building the very infrastructure that will help us win. And finally, something that Mark Zuckerberg and Alex Wang have been saying, which is super intelligence. For Meta, super intelligence is really about empowering people, not machines. And we really hope that through Meta AI and Alex Wang and what he's doing, we're going to see a lot more of that.
Dina, Axios always starts with the news, breaking news, just in the last hour.
Oh, there's news today?
A federal...
About us?
In case you parted with your phone momentarily. A federal jury in LA reached a verdict in a case over whether Meta, YouTube can be liable for kids' social media. Meta and YouTube lost. The New York Times headline, Meta and YouTube found negligent in landmark social media addiction case. This is the second time in 2 days that a jury has found against Meta. Yesterday in New Mexico. Another landmark case ordered Meta to pay $375 million over child safety violations. That sounds bad.
You know, as a mom, this is really important to me and very personal. I see firsthand just how hard the company is trying to ensure that there's not harmful content, to ensure that we're empowering parents to the best of our ability. And it's something that I watch being focused on every single day. We respectfully disagree with that decision and we're appealing. But I think back to people, not products, it's something that probably consumes the leadership's time in a massive percentage every single day.
This seems bad for business.
You know, I think more important than business. I think that as a mom, I see that it can be, you know, something that's that is a huge worry for parents, and we really recognize that. And I think that's why we are really trying to be as creative as possible with things like teen accounts, where parents can actually see what their children are seeing, and frankly monitor the content and decide what their children should have access to and not.
And last one on this, 2 back-to-back verdicts. Do you see this as a changing tide against the tech companies?
It's hard for me to say since it just happened in the last 10 minutes, but I know it's something that we're going to keep working hard and try to protect young people on our platform.
You run Meta Compute, a new division responsible for capital formation and investment of $600 billion. What's the strategy for amassing the compute that Meta's going to need to achieve its goals, dreams?
You know, the amount of capital, energy, and talent that is going to be needed over the next decade to implement the AI goals that so many people have is mind-boggling. Estimates have it at over $10 trillion of capital, at least 200 and more gigawatts of energy and compute and power, and as I mentioned earlier, hundreds of thousands of new jobs, and obviously a lot of different jobs that are being transformed. And so what we did when we built a division called Meta Compute, we brought together all of the elements. What kind of capital formation should we think about? How to use our balance sheet most effectively? What strategic capital partnerships we should be making? Obviously, the energy piece and the infrastructure piece dominates a lot of our time. And the strategy around that is to really have as effective an energy policy and strategy as possible. We're now one of the largest purchasers of nuclear energy. Who would have thought that a couple of years ago? And finally, the talent. You know, I know there's a lot of talk about what AI is going to do when it comes to human talent. We're seeing that it's actually uplifting so many people all across the country, and particularly within Meta. So we try to bring all of these things together because it really is not sort of one piece. It's not just capital like it was in the old days, or not just energy investments. It's really going to take all of this to be successful.
You have a hard job because you talk about new jobs, different jobs, and for sure, Axios sees the opportunity in AI. Jim and I write about it all the time. But the fears on the other side are very true as well. Like some jobs will go away. Some people are paying more for their power now. Meta had some layoffs today. Dan Primack tells me there were actually less than might have been thought. But what do you say to someone who's worried?
Sure. Well, I can say what I tell you to our daughters because they're worried. And in fact, I was joking with Autumn earlier. I saw Jim yesterday on Morning Joe talking about what he's telling young people. And through the Zoteka Foundation that Autumn and Jim started, they focus on mentoring. And so Jim's around a lot of young people. And he said on TV, he said this young person looked at him and said, "I'm not so sure I buy into AI." And Jim said, "I would never hire you." And that would be Jim. Now, Autumn mentors in a different way. And as I've talked to her children and mine, what I've said is that it is really scary in moments of transformation. And we've seen that in many different times in American history. But right now, this generation, which I call the AI generation, because frankly, the next 3 years are going to be the most critical, and these next 3 years are the ones when a lot of our children are trying to find jobs, are transitioning for jobs, and it's actually why it's so important, again, back to people, that they have the right mentors. Jim maybe didn't say it perfectly, but I think he was making a point. If you're not AI literate, you're not going to be as competitive as you can be. And I think that's why we, especially through superintelligence, it's really about empowering people, not machines. And I think that we all need to mentor this next generation really thoughtfully and open their minds about new possibilities that they didn't think about. Maybe you went to college for that, but the whole world is changing, so you might have to rethink. Another space that we're seeing is a lot of new small businesses being created. A lot of entrepreneurs saying, you know, I want the job security of starting something myself. I've always had this passion.
By the way,
AI
that is not
streamlines that.
Job security is not starting something yourself.
You've done pretty well. You've done pretty well here.
But so the AI generation is basically your daughters, right? Like
Yes.
my nieces and nephews, people in college, early career. Right?
Yes, yes. By the way, they've lived through a couple of pretty big transformational and challenging times. This generation lived through COVID, and that, frankly, was an enormous disruption. And they're living through, you know, AI. And I hope in this transition and transformation, they will see it as an opportunity. AI also does have an ability to be a little bit more of an equalizer because it is mostly affordable to use these tools, and they do give you an advantage that people would not have had, people that maybe didn't get graduate degrees or specialize in a certain thing. So we're also hopeful that AI will have the democratization of a lot of these industries and potential jobs.
So at Axios, we talk about zooming out, and this is the question I've been most excited to ask you, is when you were taking this job, when we talked around the time that you took this job, one of the reasons that you took it, and you had a pretty good job, was the changes that are coming to humanity.
Yes.
And just talk me through that and what the coming years are going to be like and what convinced you that humanity is on the bubble.
Sure. You know, I'd been on the board for about a year. And when Mark had asked me about coming in this role, he said, I really think this is going to be one of the most important things you do. And I thought for a minute, and I thought, oh God, I've had the honor of doing a couple of other meaningful things where I had impact, whether it was in government or in the Middle East or in finance. And I paused for a second and I thought, he's right. And it's what I told our girls. I do believe this will be an important thing that I do, probably the most, because we are witnessing the transformation of humanity today. And if I could even play the tiniest role in the room, I would feel like I was making an
impact. I can't
impact.
let that go. The transformation of humanity. Just go one layer deeper on that.
Well, we are witnessing how people are thinking of using this technology in ways we couldn't have even imagined. You think about the new focus on science and disease prevention, and how many clinicians now are finding cures that they never thought was available. You think about, frankly, the jobs that are being created that a generation felt, at least, it was left behind, which are now seen as most critical jobs: welders, construction workers, electricians. And you think about our kids, and it's hard to even fathom what they will be doing in 3 to 5 and 10 years. And so we're witnessing this transformation, but we have to remember that the most important word in it is humanity. And we have to really be careful that we don't lose that and we don't lose the soul that is so critical as these technologies are guided.
You helped build and lead last year's Pennsylvania Energy and Innovation Summit in Pittsburgh, one of your favorite places. And we saw in there the recipe for how a state, and part of Pennsylvania is the Rust Belt, how like states, localities can thrive in these disrupted times. What did you learn there? What is the takeaway for people across America and all 35 Axios local cities that aren't San Francisco or LA or New York or DC?
Well, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is at the epicenter of the AI revolution in America. No, I live there, but I really do believe that it has a unique secret sauce. It has platforms like Carnegie Mellon, an institution that was heavily involved in the creation of AI early on, and a lot of engineers. It has an incredible skilled labor force because of all of the years of steel, and the Industrial Revolution was literally born there. And so many labor leaders have always prepared, I think, this workforce in Pittsburgh very thoughtfully. And you've actually got innovation and entrepreneurs like Jake Lacerian of Gecko Robots, Joe Dominguez, who you're going to be speaking with later, of Constellation Energy. I mean, all of these pieces were so critical to bring together because it's not just one piece that will really create an environment where AI can thrive. And it also takes a lot of local leaders who believe in it. And so it was a huge honor to do that in Pittsburgh. And I think you're seeing other cities really try to make the case for why they can be an AI hub and are really worthy of that investment as well.
Jim and I did a column this week based on Anthropic's new economic index on learning curves. And we talked about the importance of AI fluency. You might have heard, you have a book, Who Believed in You, about mentoring, a lot of case studies. How is mentoring going to fit into AI learning?
You know, it's interesting. We wrote this book, Who Believed in You. We had the privilege of interviewing so many people that we admired, from Tory Burch, our friend, to Christine Lagarde and Condi Rice, Wes Moore and Sarah Huckabee Sanders, David Chang. I mean, it was such a diverse group of people. And to a person, they each said, without that person who believed in me, I wouldn't be where I am today. And the most important moments that happened were always one of two, either at a moment of failure. And to have a mentor at that moment say to you, failure is the thing that happens right before success. You can't have a career. You can't build Axios. You can't do the things that so many of you are doing in this room without having failure. The second is, my life is changing rapidly and this transition scares the heck out of me. And that's when a human mentor, not a humanoid, a human mentor comes and says, this is how you should think about your future. I see this in you. You may not see it in yourself. So I actually think that mentoring is going to be one of the greatest treasures that we can give people that we care about for the future, and more importantly than ever, as AI takes off and they're trying to figure out how it fits in their life, in their career, and in their family.
Dina, as we say goodbye, we usually do one fun thing, but instead, you have a confession.
I didn't know you were actually going to ask me this. Okay, my confession is that my Instagram feed is all dogs. It's all golden retrievers. I send them to people and my kids say, Mom, those aren't real dogs, that's AI. But I don't care, I love it. And so it gotten to a point there where all I was seeing were golden retrievers, and I was like, how do I fix my feed? I've only been there 8 weeks, okay? I know I should have known this. But I read in Axios Finish Line last week that you can control your feed by hitting the following button on the top of your Instagram page, and you can go back to seeing all your friends and who you're following. That's my confession. I did not know that.
Clean your feed and golden retrievers.
Yes, that's it.
Dina Powell McCormick, Madam President.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you for a great conversation.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mark Warner isn't just a senator. He's a leading voice on AI and national security. As vice chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, the Virginia Democrat sits at the center of classified briefings on cyber threats, China, and emerging tech risks. A former tech entrepreneur, he pushed for AI guardrails without slowing U.S. innovation, shaping how America competes and stays secure.
For being here today.
Hey, Maria.
Senator, let's just jump right in.
I wanted to see the video. Was the video good?
The backstage is too fun. I wanted to get your thoughts on, the most recent news that is in AI policy right now. The White House sent over a framework for congressional action, and you mentioned, you said that it lacks significant substance. What would a substantive federal AI law actually look like in your view, and where is there any common ground on here?
Well, I think there's a lot of common ground, actually. I thought it was fairly thin, all the preparation and, 5 pages of, that was about as much generic blah, blah as you can imagine. I think there are 2 major domains we need to think about in terms of AI safety. Number 1, where again, if we go back and say, how have we done on bringing safety rules and regulations to emerging tech? Congress is batting a big 0. I had a half dozen bipartisan bills on social media that were in the 2016, 2017, 2018 timeframe. None of them passed. I don't think, I'm not even sure Dina wouldn't agree that if we'd had some social media parameters, we might have a hell of a lot healthier generation of younger kids. So on the AI guardrails, I think we've got a lot of work to do, but it needs to be with specificity. And the area that I hope, and I can launch into my pitch now or wait till the next question.
Don't worry, you will.
On the AI economic disruption, where I respectfully want to take issue with even Mike and Dina a little bit.
Yeah. So feel free. I know that you have talked a lot about the way that AI is going to impact jobs in particular. You have made it a central topic of your campaign. You're up for re-election. What is the solution here? I know that you've introduced bills to improve the data around AI impact, but the impact is being felt now.
Yeah, we've done, I think, some smart legislation. I've done it with Josh Hawley. I'm getting BLS to start reporting on AI disruption, which I think will come less in actual firings and more in the case of people just not getting hired. I've got a AI commission bill with Mike Rounds that kind of models itself after the cyber solarium, which was maybe the only useful commission Congress has dealt with in the last 20 years to actually produce stuff. I've got an AI bill with John Kennedy on AI in the financial sector. But, and it's not often a politician will acknowledge, all these bills are nice, but not anywhere near sufficient to the problem. I am as AI optimistic long as maybe even all you guys at Axios, but long meaning 8 to 10 years. I am very and increasingly AI on the short-term economic disruption. I believe today it is going to be exponentially bigger than I believed in as recently as last November or December. And let me go through a couple of reasons why. One, recent college grad unemployment's 9%. I'll bet anybody in the room it goes to 30 or 35% before 2028. I think, hitting particularly kids who've done everything right coming out of college has a double economic whammy, scares the hell out of everybody kind of in college or approaching college. It's also going to piss off a lot of parents who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars getting their kid a college education and there's no job for them. I think if you look at specifically, say, what Claude has done just in the last couple months in terms of disruption in the software market and in the HR market, the market recovered a little bit in both. But I was with one of the top VCs yesterday, and he's prepared, and he's got about 40% of his portfolio are software companies. He believes there's a fairly significant chance that he will have to write them all down to 0.
So there is a lot of concern for anxiety. My question to you, though, is why not introduce legislation that gets at the heart of the matter then?
Because the problem is, and I wish, and we are at a crowd here, if somebody's got the answer, please, I'm open for business. If we go way back in time, 4 years ago, and we said, we're approaching this new thing coming, what is our solution set to get people through the transition? We would have said, go become a coder, learn to code. Mm-hmm. That was well-intentioned and completely the wrong answer. I had one of the top 10 law firms in the country tell me they're not hiring any first-year associates this year. And I think the biggest evangelist of AI, Sam Altman, Dario, others, I know them well, they are cutting back on their enthusiasm because they're afraid they're going to freak out people. So I think this is going to be significant. And if government, and the thing I'm trying, give me 2 more points here. One, if government does it alone, we're going to screw it up. If we come up with a rebaked TAA program, Trade Assistance Act, that we did in the early 90s for globalization, it's not going to work. We desperately need the AI community to come in and help us figure it out, and frankly, help us pay for it, because you're going to pay one way or the other. We're seeing in Virginia right now, and I know we're going to get to this as well, a major debate around data centers, and we are the king of data centers, and we're proud of that. But they are saying, the legislature's looking at taking $600 million out of the cash flow. They get about $1.5 billion a year in tax breaks, but taking about $600 million out. Now, if I was part of the AI community, I would see this as coming and say, we want to partner with government on how we figure out this economic transition. The idea of AI-aligned jobs, I think we'll get to those in 3, 4, 5 years. But short term, I don't know, one person suggested, I'm not sure it's a good idea, but this is the kind of big ideas we need. The jobs are going to get eliminated the most. You go to a mid-tier public university and you major in business or business administration, you're doomed to not get a job. So maybe we take some of OpenAI's bucket of money they put out on their B Corp basis and pay people a stipend to go become nurses. Nurses.
Why is that the winning message? So you're capitalizing a lot on these voter anxieties ahead of the midterms.
No, I'm capitalizing a lot on what is genuine fear and what the most advanced thinkers in AI predict will happen in the short term.
Right. It's a valid concern among voters on the job front and also on the data center front, which your state is uniquely at the epicenter of. Why go this more centrist approach around let's have OpenAI pay for someone to become a nurse versus, a moratorium, a data center moratorium? Why not that approach?
That would be idiocy. A data center moratorium simply means China's going to move quicker. This is one where we can't lose. A data center moratorium is not going to stop any of the established models from going to the next level. The idea that we're going to stuff this back into the bottle, that's a ridiculous premise. Now, there will be requirements that data centers can't pass on their water costs, their power costs, and others. That's coming in a massive way. And again, I point out, if we take a big chunk of the hide, if the legislature takes a big chunk of the hide in Virginia, that will happen everywhere. And I guess and data centers may not even be the right place to hit it. Maybe it's asking Jensen to chip in as the bullet maker. Maybe it's asking all the large language models. Maybe it's asking the companies that are using the models. But the idea that there's not going to be a requirement that the community has to help figure this out and help design this transition, I think is a huge missed opportunity, because, as you said, the voter anxiety has already gotten to the point. Recent surveys showed that the level of popularity of AI in the American population generally right now, about 26, 27%, that is basically the equivalent of the popularity of the American Immigration Authority, ICE. So if you're AI optimistic, you don't want to be banded together with the ICE enforcement activities as a value to our society. And please, guys, this won't come from one political party. This will come from populism from both the left and the right, and there will be these things, let's just stop all innovation.
We are seeing a surge in spending from AI companies and aligned super PACs. Does this concern you? Will it influence the debate in one way or another? And how concerned are you that it will influence Democrats' approach in particular?
No, listen. I'm in the middle of crypto hell trying to get a market structure bill done. The idea that the AI guys are going to play, it can't stop. But I just really implore, and I do this privately in a much more aggressive fashion, do not believe that just because you can stop some legislation today that you're off the hook if I'm right. I hope I'm not right. That
so
if we're 30%.
You wouldn't take AI PAC money?
Pardon me?
You wouldn't take AI PAC money?
I'm going to be willing to take anybody that plays by the rules. But I also think the AI community can be a force for positivity. Although, as we said backstage, and I say this respectfully knowing I'm talking to the industry here, when I think about many of the AI big heads that are brilliantly smart, empathetic is not the first word that comes to mind. But if they don't recognize that that is going to be a requirement, they're going to get blown away by both the left and the right pitchforks coming after them, because this is scaring people. And the thing that is so frustrating to me, and again, I'm open for business on this, I have yet to hear anyone in the community say what we should exactly be doing right now. I mean, the funding nurses may not be the right idea, but I've had no one say, here's how I'm designing a retraining curriculum that actually works, when models are literally changing in an exponential rate every 2 months. But we need to, and I think the community could buy off goodwill as well as do the right thing if they'd say, we know we're going to have to help contribute to getting this right.
Senator, just shifting gears here a little bit, I really want to get your thoughts on the Pentagon-Anthropic dispute. You said you were deeply disturbed by the reports of the government's pressure on this company. Where should the line be between government use of AI, particularly in matters of national security, and company-imposed safeguards?
Well, first of all, I'm not saying Anthropic was perfect in this, but any company that's going to work with DOD, and it is DOD, no matter what the other guys call it, has to make some concessions. That's the rules of the road. But are we really going to empower one guy, in this case Pete Hegseth, to determine total national policy on whether AI tools are used for total surveillance of the American population, or creating an AI offensive weapon without a human in the loop? Those should be policy decisions, not left to a single individual. And the ability, you talk about governmental policy interfering in the market. You give one guy the ability to declare any company, American company, a global supply chain risk, that is the equivalent of a death sentence to any company that works, whether the AI or otherwise, with the DoD, because if they're a big company, many of their customers, partners will work with DoD. That ought to be a process, and I've had very successful conversations with a lot of my Republicans who don't want more government interference, to say this kind of single point without any process is not the right approach.
Can we see congressional action on this year through NDAA, perhaps?
I think there'll be efforts in NDAA, but if this is allowed to stand, we have set a precedent. They're in court right now. And the answer I get from some of my Republican friends is, this is, again, just the administration huffing and puffing. They're giving Anthropic 6 months. Of course, they're not going to do this. But if this picks up momentum, and again, any single secretary, but particularly at DoD, can declare you a supply chain risk without a promise, without a process, all of you hoping to do business there, if you're not terrified by that, you should be.
That is all the time we have. Thank you so much, Senator. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Craig Martell has wired AI into America's defense strategy. As the Pentagon's former chief digital and AI officer, he led efforts to operationalize AI, from data integration to battlefield decision-making. Now CTO of Lockheed Martin, he brings that expertise to the private sector, where AI, autonomy, and national security converge in an era of algorithmic warfare and great power competition.
Craig, thanks for making the trip over here. What did you think about the hype reel? Do we need to issue a correction or anything?
No, it seemed okay. I'm not quite sure what it said, but
yeah,
okay.
That's fair enough. I want to start hot with you. Do you think the average American knows what the hell they're talking about when they talk about AI?
Well, you said that pejoratively, so let me switch that and say, what is AI? And I think most folks don't know what AI is, and so if the audience is okay with it, I'd like to give the 2-minute version.
I'll keep you to 2 minutes, but let's go.
Keep me to 2 minutes. AI, everybody thinks AI is going to replace human reasoning, and it's designed to do things that humans can do, and we want a machine to be able to do them. But I fundamentally believe that's not the case. What AI is simply statistics at scale. You gather data from the past to build a model to predict the future. I think it's really important that we think about it that way, Colin, because when you gather data from the past to build a model to predict the future, I'm going to say that a lot, gathering that data might be wrong. You might have gathered the wrong data. It might not be the data for your problem. Or you might have built a model that finds some correlations in the data, but not the correlations you care about. Or, particularly from the perspective of my industry, the world might change. So you gathered data from the past, you built a model to predict the future, but the world changed sufficiently that that model no longer applies. And you can imagine in warfare, for example, the world changes.
Like a road blowing up.
The road blowing up, the world changes quite a bit. So what I would, part of, I think, my mission in the world is to drive this view. AI is statistics at scale. You gather data from the past to build a model to predict the future. Sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. So I think it's extremely important that we're empirical about when it's going to work and when it's not. One more sentence. I don't know if I have 2 minutes.
No, you got a minute, yeah.
All right. Please don't think about it as a monolithic technology. Please don't think about it as if we have it, we win, a panacea, or if they have it, we lose, a Pandora's box. That's fundamentally the wrong way to think about it. It's a collection of statistical techniques that work for some use cases. Some of them work for some use cases, and some others work for other use cases. And for some use cases, it doesn't work at all, and that's okay. Statistics at scale.
You shaved 30 seconds off that. That was solid.
All right.
So given this is statistics, probability, what happens when an autonomous weapon, a robo-wingman, a countermeasure reacts wrong, an algorithm gets something wrong? Who's to blame? Who shoulders that?
That's right.
fault?
So that's a great question. Before we talk about weapons that encode these statistical techniques or platforms that use these statistical techniques, let's talk about a really dumb tool, a mortar. A mortar. Go back to, I was watching the movie with my daughter, War Horse, my 14-year-old daughter, and it takes place in World War I. So a mortar, you drop it in, a parabola happens, an explosion happens. You drop it in, parabola, explosion. Does it always land at exactly the same spot? No. Is it always predictable? No. But if you train enough with it, train, which the military does very, very well, train, you understand the error envelope of that weapon. You understand that there's going to be some oval or maybe a circle in which that munition lands. Okay, great. Now you can take the responsibility, listen to my words, you, the user of the mortar, can take the responsibility, given that I've trained with it and I understand the kinds of errors it makes, that to be able to deploy that weapon or not. Right? And if I'm trying to go between a school and a church and I want the mortar to land there and they're too close together, maybe I don't use a mortar. If they're far enough apart and I feel really confident that it's going to land in a safe spot, or it's not really, weapons aren't safe, but lands where I want it to land, then I choose to use it. And if it gets it wrong, my fault.
That extends to drones, that extends
to everything. That extends to all techniques. You train. You understand the error envelopes of these statistical tools. They're not always statistical, but since we're talking about modern AI tools are statistical. You train, understand the error envelope, and then you can make the rational decision if you want to take responsibility to deploy that device, to deploy that platform.
So given training, given practicing, who do you think has the data edge? You were big on this as the CDAO in the Pentagon. Data labeling, running experiments, that sort of thing.
Thanks.
Do you think it's the US? Does the US have better data? Does China have the better data? And then can quantity lap quality at some point?
Oh, that's a great question. There's a very famous paper called The Unreasonable Effect of Data. I think it was written in the late 90s. And that paper showed that more data is more important than better algorithms. And that's probably true, but it has to be more quality data, right? Because if you have more bad data, then you're just creating random noise, right? You're creating randomness. And since it's statistics at scale, where you gather data from the past to build a model to predict the future, if your data is random noise, your model is random noise. So you do need quality data, but more of it really matters. To your question about who's doing better, I think that we in the in the US and with our allies probably have access to more high quality data, theoretically. We don't always have the political infrastructure that allows us to get access to that, and that's a good thing because we live in a free society. So this is always going to be a tough one. There's lots and lots of data, but I want to live in a free society where that data isn't magically available to everybody, versus other societies where they have high quality data and it is available to the system as well.
This might be the million-dollar question then. Like, how do you balance the need to fight tonight, to use the Pentagon jargon, with AI at your side, and then getting the long run correct?
Right. Well, this was when I was in office, this is one of my biggest pushes. You have to balance the fight tonight with the fight of the future. And here's how I motivate this. I know it doesn't look like it, but I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old boy. My 14-year-old daughter in 5 years will be 19. That means she might be the warfighter. And my 5-year-old boy in 10 years will be 19. That means he might be the warfighter. So I take it as my responsibility, both when I was CDAO and also as CTO of Lockheed, to work on what the future is going to look like here. So if they are the warfighter, I would be very proud if they are the warfighter, that I'm giving them the tools that they need. So we have to have part of the infrastructure, part of the talent, part of the world focusing on the future and not just the fight tonight.
What do you think the AI autonomy space looks like when perhaps your daughter does join the Army, the Marines, et cetera? Like, what is that big leap? Pull out your crystal ball.
Well, so I don't know the answer to that. I don't think the current trajectory in AI is going to get us where we want to be.
Where do we want to be?
Well, I think what we want to be is something that replaces humans. And both because it saves companies money. Unfortunately, that's a pressure. But the other pressure is it keeps people safe, right? If I can have a machine do something in a warfighting scenario that I currently need a human for, then that's a good thing. So I actually think, how about this? Where do I want to see the future going?
Yes.
All right, so it's slightly different than the question you asked. I want to see human-machine teaming. I want us to really focus on human-machine teaming. Because I don't believe AI is going to get us to cognitive machine. Sorry. I don't believe statistics at scale is going to get us to cognitive machines. Might there be some other techniques? Love that question. Happy to talk about that. I don't know the answer. But I don't believe statistics at scale is going to get us to cognitive machines. And what we're doing right now is statistics at scale. So what I would really love to see is pressure on human-machine teaming. So Lockheed just released something called Vectis,
yes. Out of Skunkworks,
which is a CCA, Collaborative Combat Aircraft. Sorry to my press team who's mad at me right now for forgetting the exact acronym. But it's essentially a bunch of autonomous wingmen that fly along with an F-35. To me, that's a really beautiful scenario because there's a pilot who can maybe be in a safer position that can make choices for these autonomous vehicles and can actually plan how these autonomous vehicles can do their job, and then can react when you lose one or where one went awry. Because there's statistics at scale, they're going to be wrong sometimes. So maybe you could self-destruct one, but there's human-machine teaming, I think, really is where we need to be pushing. Until we figure out, there's some really smart people working on superintelligence, and if we figure out how to get there, that's a different question. I don't think the current trajectory is going to get us there. Speaking of current trajectory, do you think that pilot in the F-35 right now is comfortable with delegating or just being like, okay, that robot's got my back, we'll be fine out here? That's a great question to which I don't really know the answer. So I'm giving you I'm not giving you Lockheed's answer, I'm giving you Craig's answer. Yeah. The pilot of an F-35 has so much to do. Mm-hmm. It is, first of all, their task is unbelievably hard. And they're flying a machine that is very, very complex. So the degree to which they can offload some of that cognitive work, I think would be positive, not negative. So let's go to Lockheed specifically. Your CTO, what do you see as the company's emerging tech priorities? Is it something skunkworky? Of course, Skunkworks is awesome. So I have the coolest job. I got to tell you, Skunkworks is amazing. But it's not just Skunkworks; it's all over the company. I think there's three major pressures that we're really pushing on. One I already mentioned is autonomy. But when I say autonomy, That actually covers everything. That covers where do we use AI tools? Where do we use these statistical tools? Where do we have autonomous platforms coordinated with one another? And where do we have human-machine teaming? So that human-machine teaming is a really big part that most people don't think about when they think about autonomy. We think very hard about it. Stuff as simple as, does the screen, what's the cognitive science of the screen? Do the icons on the screen convey the information quickly enough so a decision can be made in an OODA loop for the pilot? Like, we think about the smallest things. And so human-machine teaming, autonomy is one. Another is quantum, but I don't mean...
I was going to say computing or sensing?
Great question. I don't actually mean quantum computing. I'll tell you why in a second. What I really mean is quantum sensing, which is so cool. You can basically see in the dark now. You send out a few photons, you keep some entangled photons. By the way, my physics is high school physics, that's all.
I didn't even make it to physics.
So you throw out some photons, you keep the entangled photons, so when the photons come back, they work with the entangled photons to give you a brighter picture than the photons you sent out. Unbelievably cool. We just recently did a demo where we were able to see a whale out in the ocean 2 miles out on a cloudy day. It was really fascinating. So that's one. The other is quantum PNT, position, navigation, and timing. So if you've ever seen the movie Hunt for Red October, one of my favorites, for the young folks, you should see it. You can see how submarines navigate. They navigate by dead reckoning. They have a good map and they pay attention to time. If you have quantum position, navigation, and timing, you have hypersensitive dead reckoning. It's going to be, you'd have to remake the movie.
Last two questions I want to squeeze in here. You left the CDAO in 2024, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah.
Did you leave it in a good state, and what have you seen that trajectory? How have you seen it evolve from the outside?
I'm only going to answer yes to that, of course. Why would I say I left in a bad state? That would mean I didn't do my job. No, I think we did leave it in a good state. Because my major focus, and I still believe this today, you got to focus on the data that solves your problems. Why? Because AI is statistics at scale. You gather data from the past to build a model to predict the future. If you don't have the right data for that particular use case, then you don't have any AI. And so in my hierarchy of needs, data was the most important thing, focusing on the data. And the department, I think, is in really good shape there. And another really interesting thing that happened is that the CDAO moved under CIO, I think?
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe it moved under CIO, which I think is really good idea. Because CDAO, when I first got there, I asked the question, why isn't this part of CIO? And the real answer was to put AI, to make sure AI had the visibility that it deserves. I think that's great. But the solution to the kinds of AI that the department's going to need are really infrastructural. And so putting it under CIO, I thought was a really good idea. So I think they're doing a pretty good job.
Last question. Which office of yours had more windows, the Pentagon or your Lockheed one?
My Lockheed one, the Pentagon one. I did have a couple of windows, but they had this yellow film on it, which you really couldn't see out of.
We're going to have to leave it there, Craig. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody. Good?
Introducing our View from the Top moderator and Axios publisher, Nicholas Johnston.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Nicholas Johnston, the publisher of Axios. Thank you so much for joining us here at AI plus DC. This is one of our flagship summits. This is definitely a flagship building. It's one of the most important topics I think we talk about on stage and that we cover in our newsroom, AI and how it's changing the world around us. So this is a very important conversation. It's a great afternoon to have it. Thank you all so much for being here. We're grateful you're here. Also hugely grateful for all of our partners. Nothing we do at Axios is possible without the support of our partners. The investments we make in journalism around the world, around the country, great conversations like this. So huge thanks to United Health Group for being one of our partners helping make today possible. And so I'm very excited to welcome to the stage for a View from the Top conversation, Optum Insight CEO, Sandeep Dadlani. Sandeep, welcome to AI plus DC. Good to see you again.
Good to see you again, Nick.
Since we last had a conversation.
What a party. Look at this room.
Bigger room than you're used to, maybe.
I know, yeah.
Since we last talked about AI in healthcare, you have a new title. Congratulations. Tell us a little bit about your new role.
Thank you. For the last 3 years, I was CTO of all of United Health Group. We put 1,000+ AI use cases into production. These are the pragmatic, boring use cases versus the, the sexy, shiny ones you see in pilots and boardrooms. And then we decided to take all of those to actually serve all of the healthcare market through Optum Insight. So Optum Insight is our data and AI arm, and I'm now the CEO of that company.
So let's start talking about that AI Insight. Let's dive right in, and what I really want to do, and I love talking to you about, is like getting into specifics instead of just the theoreticals. Like the first topic, let's zero in on, like, how do you make healthcare more patient-centered? Put the person at the center of it. Are there AI tools you're being brought to bear on that problem?
Yeah, so healthcare, obviously $5.6 trillion. US spends more than anybody else. Our lifespans are not, higher than any other continent, and yet we have people above 50 with multiple chronic conditions. Almost 51% of Americans above 50 have multiple chronic conditions. So we are not getting great healthcare outcomes. It is broken. We think AI can help fix some of this. So an example is one of the internal work we did that we now take to the rest of the healthcare industry is a platform called Optum Real. Optum Real addresses the claims and reimbursement problem across America. We have more than 6 billion claims being processed all over America. About 90% get auto-adjudicated, instantly adjudicated, 2% get clinically denied. The remaining 8% just have a to and fro between payers and providers, trying to find more information from each other. We launched a platform called Optum Real that dramatically changed that and allowed us to instantly solve that problem. And so in the early programs with Allina Health and Avensboro Health, two things happened. One, avoidable denials went down 5x for the provider. And then two, we started a pilot where patients were getting upfront cost estimates for their procedures, for their radiology and cardiology procedures. Imagine, Nick, getting an upfront price for your healthcare procedure. Like that is how you experience every other retail service except healthcare. The accuracy of the upfront estimate, 95.6%, which means patients have choice and price across. This at scale takes out about $500–600 billion of administrative waste across healthcare in America, makes it more affordable, gives patient choice, and so on.
Giving them the information to make those kinds of decisions. You mentioned the work that was going back and forth between pet provider and insurance company. Burnout is a huge issue in the medical field now. I imagine there's other things that AI is being brought to bear on that to make the doctor's life easier.
I agree. Listen, Optum Health, part of Optum, employs over 10,000 doctors, of course, tens of thousands of nurses. So we have rolled out ambient listening to about 4,500 doctors across Optum Health, and they save 43% of their administrative notes-taking time, and that they call their pajama time. I actually get love messages from the doctors saying, you saved me my pajama time, but wait.
What is pajama time? That means like they're in their pajamas doing their work.
That time which they could spend with their families.
Yeah.
They could spend about thinking of better healthcare.
They could be asleep.
Exactly.
Right.
And during the patient interaction, they actually look into your eyes. How about that? A doctor looking into your eyes, checking how you are. But wait, we made 19 million house calls, visits to the home of patients who otherwise don't have access to care in a year. And nurses going up to these house calls have to read up all your clinical records, hundreds of pages, literally in the driveway as they drive in rural America. We converted all those clinical records into a summary, into a podcast. So you could listen to Taylor Swift, or while driving, you can listen to this podcast, understand what's happening with Nick's health, and walk into Nick's home with that understanding. The nurses love it as well.
Right.
That allows us to have the clinicians operate at the top of their license.
And this isn't theoretical, what you're talking about
This is
now.
at scale.
Like there's a nurse driving around the street somewhere listening to a podcast about the patient care.
That's right. So millions of house calls, 4,500 doctors. These are no longer shiny pilots in the boardroom. What's coming next is we combine all this with the claims process so that the entire patient experience, starting from upfront cost estimates to ambient listening at the doctor to payments, everything is streamlined.
You mentioned chronic care at the start earlier. I want to dig in a little bit of that. So much of the healthcare system is built for once you're sick, as opposed to before you're sick. Are there AI tools you found that have helped maybe pick up on conditions before they become critical?
Well, what AI does a reliable job of and this is important, it has to be reliable and accurate, is help understand populations. So we look at populations, understand chronic condition prevalence, and then simulate which program interventions might create what benefits. If there's a certain section of the population with diabetes, program 1 or program 2, simulate them to see which one create a better outcome, and then drive those interventions. So Value Connect, one of our platforms, and we've just rolled it out to a few payers and providers. This is 3 months in, so I'm sharing like hot off the press news with you. The results we are seeing is 28% lower admissions into hospitals, 29% lower readmission rates into ER. So the results are really fantastic as we use AI responsibly with the patient at the center.
Right.
Remember, this is trying to keep the patients out of the hospital, out of the ER. That it drives costs down for healthcare is just
looking at these massive data sets to see these things before they rise to that critical, that acute level.
Precisely.
We can't talk about healthcare without talking about cost. Like affordability is a huge concern. You touched on just how much we spend. These efficiencies that AI are being brought, are they moving the cost needle as well?
Look, these are early stages. We have to go about responsibly through it. So we have a big AI responsible board that reviews each of those 1,000 use cases, each of our products. But look, the early signs, think about it. We've had, with the same Value Connect platform we described, 20% care gap closures, which means the populations who are about to not have their care taken care of, their condition not taken care of, those care gaps are closed by this platform. Doctors are asked to intervene or recommended to intervene for those care gap closures. That automatically reduces the cost of healthcare. We keep people out of the hospitals. We intervene when they fall sick, if they do, and that's the story.
So before we run out of time here, spin this forward. I mean, what you've told us about today, these are things happening now. These are benefits being delivered to patients. What's exciting to you over the horizon? Where is this going?
I imagine a world where, I mean, you already have the digital front doors of health emerging. Everybody's launching a ChatGPT Health, an Anthropic Health, and so on and so forth. You may begin your healthcare journey anywhere, on Google, and so on, but you get led into this world, which is a benefits-aware world. Nick, you're eligible for such and such benefits. Here's the doctor closest to you that can give you the best outcomes. But then you get an estimate and an appointment in the same smooth interface, like you would do on OpenTable or Resi or any of the favorite platforms that you have. You are instantly being led to a physician or a doctor that is ambient listening the entire conversation, so the doctor's looking into your eyes. All your patient intake is not paper forms. The electronic records are being pulled from your past and provided to the doctor with your permission. And the doctor's diagnosis is then converted into both your chart, a claim, the payer pays the claim, the patient walks out having paid their dues, and so on. Your record stays with you, along with your favorite AI assistant that you trust. It's not too far away.
How far
what I'm
away?
describing, so I was going to say, we're going to see pilots of this happening soon as the end of this year, beginning of next year. So we are not dreaming of a 10-year journey. AI has helped us, give us conviction that we can make a dent now.
That was a great information-dense conversation. I love talking to you, Sandeep, about healthcare and AI. Before we get the hook, I want to end on one fun thing. You always have great one fun AI things. Tell me your favorite AI use case right now.
Right now, well, so I grew up playing cricket. I have no idea what basketball is. But my colleagues included me in the CBS Sports brackets lobby. And I'm supposed to choose my brackets. And of course, I use AI to choose my brackets because I have no idea who's winning or who's losing. I am consistently #1 so far in that entire
He showed
group.
me his phone. He's winning his bracket pool right now, thanks to AI.
That's my fun
What
thing.
can it not do? Sandeep, thanks so much for being here and sharing your insight. Huge thanks to United Health Group for making today possible. Stick around, the conversations continue.
Joe Dominguez runs the company helping power America's AI boom. As CEO of Constellation Energy, the nation's largest producer of carbon-free energy, he is central to the race to supply electricity to data centers. From nuclear restarts to long-term deals with hyperscalers, Dominguez is shaping whether the U.S. can meet AI's soaring energy demands in 2026.
Hello, Axios AI Plus DC. Joe Dominguez, welcome to the Axios stage.
Thanks, looking forward.
Before we plunge, by the way, I was introducing you backstage as a proud Jersey boy, and you said?
I said he's introduced me that way about 5 times, and I've yet to run into anybody who said, yeah, Jersey. So if there's anybody out there, help me out a little bit. I'm feeling a little bit down. Don't shake your head now. I was just looking for...
So good. Joe, before we plunge in, I wanted to pause to thank our Axios Events colleagues. This is amazing. And behind the scenes, like months and months and months have gone into this. So thank you to Axios Live for the amazing events they put on. This incredible space, the National Building Museum, thank the people who've made this an amazing place for us and our partners who make these conversations possible. Joe, you say that you run, thank you. You run the largest publicly traded power producer on the planet. And what's fascinating to me is that you are thinking about AI internally and externally. How is it changing your 16,000 plus workforce?
Everywhere. You know, I think everybody understands how it changes finance, legal, all the back office operations. People are familiar enough with that. But what we're trying to do is dispatch the energy system, different components of it together that are dependent on weather, dependent on forecasted demand. So AI does this wonderful job taking these populations of data and really pulling them together and providing us a good forecast when to run a dam, a hydroelectric dam, rather than store the water behind the dam. So that sort of thing. Probably the thing, Mike, that I think we're doing that is probably the coolest thing we're doing is at a nuclear plant, about 15% of our work hours every day are planning work in the future. And if you think about the complexity of running a nuclear plant, the interactions between all the different forms of equipment, in order to plan that work, you have to understand the profile of 1,000 pieces of equipment and all that sort of stuff. AI, again, is helping us plan. If we get this right, I think we're going to take that 15% of time we're spending planning work down to something like 5% of time.
Joe, something that fascinates me about Constellation and why I was so excited when Louise Norris connected with your team and made this conversation possible is that your assets span nuclear, wind, solar, natural gas, geothermal, hydro. That's very rare. Which of those is being most transformed by AI?
Well, look, I think nuclear has probably has seen the greatest impact, and I'll tell you why. We've done this thing in the country probably over the last 20 years where we think about electric generation from the way kind of we'd like it to be. So because wind and solar is very popular from a public opinion standpoint, and we'd like everything to run on wind and solar, and we've built a lot of it. I think we've probably over-rotated on doing a selection based on public opinion polling of what the right electric generation technology is. The way we did it for the 100 years before that is we thought about what are we trying to power, and we picked the technology that met that profile best. So if you go back to that and you start from the what are we trying to power, if we're trying to power data centers that are worth, call it 20, 30, $50 billion or even more in certain things, those guys want to run that stuff 24/7. So that again translates into what runs 24/7 without interruption, and nothing does that better than a nuclear plant. Then if you overlay a company that is concerned with climate and zero emissions, slam dunk for nuclear.
Now, you power data centers. Constellation works with 3/4 of the Fortune 100, so by definition, you're the power behind these data centers. So public opinion matters to you. And we're talking backstage about these two Meta verdicts back to back. Like, how concerned are you about public perception about AI?
Oh, look, I'm hugely concerned about it. I don't know what, I wasn't in the jury room or in the courtroom to hear the evidence or what it's all about. But to me, it's probably another data point of the manifestation of fear around AI. Maybe these verdicts are that, maybe I'm wrong about that. But we're certainly seeing it in public opinion polling. I think we were talking backstage about public opinion polling for AI being something like 26% to 30%, depending on what poll you're looking at. Nuclear energy, by the way, is polling at over 60%. And nuclear has been controversial in the U.S. And in other places. So we're seeing something that's polling at a half of where nuclear is. It represents to a lot of people fear of losing their job, fear of losing control over their kids, losing control of their private data, frankly, losing economic opportunities in the future. It's changing all sorts of things. And what I look for is, how do people express that? And jury verdicts are a way to express that. Local ordinances that are blocking data center development, we're starting to see that surface around the country. At some level, I think we could have a national discussion and understand, hey, it's important for America to lead in AI. And we understand strategically for economic efficiency, for the defense of the nation, some of the speakers have talked about that already, that it's critically important we do it here. And to coin a line from Macbeth, Lady Macbeth once said something like, for those things that will occur regardless, we should show little regard. In other words, for those things that are going to happen, regardless of what we think about them, we probably ought not spend a ton of time on. AI is going to happen, regardless of whether a jury decides something or there's a local ordinance. But Americans right now are consumed with the fear of it. And in that fear, we lose nuance. And nuance is where this lives.
And you draw an analogy to the 1970s.
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about it. I mean, look, I think there are a number of analogies relative to different technologies where we're seeing something that is very concerning. If we were to do public opinion polling on nuclear energy in 1943 or 1944, the Manhattan Project never happens, and yet essential for the nation's defense at that time, right?
Joe, one of the things I love about Axios AI plus DC and these summits is you have a whole room full and an audience around the world of people who really care, people who are experts. And I love kind of blow my mind questions. And I wonder if you could talk to us a little bit about scale. Think about when you were running the power grid in the Midwest. How did the scale of what you were worried about, focused on then, compare to the numbers you focus on now?
Yeah, it is no comparison. Look, I was, in rolling up to my current position, I had a job. I started in the business as a general counsel for Pico Energy, which is a big utility in the Philadelphia area. There, our largest customer was about 45 megawatts. Forget about what a megawatt is. It was 45 of them. When I ran Commonwealth Edison, which is second or third largest wires company in America, covering the greater Chicago area, our biggest customer was the electric arc steel mills that were on the border of Illinois and Indiana. That was about 130 megawatts. When you hear people talk about these Stargate data centers, we're talking about 5,000 megawatts. Relatively speaking, the city of Philadelphia today, right, if I know their data pretty well, they're running on about 3,500 to 4,000 megawatts. That's a mild day, so that's what we're pumping out. For the 6 million people that live in there, the hundreds of thousands of businesses, everything that's going on in that region, 3,500 megawatts, if you're building a huge training data center of 5,000 megawatts, you immediately get the scale of this thing. So it's not just the accumulation of energy, but it's how do you find that much energy on the grid? And that's, again, why nuclear plants are something these people are talking about, because that accumulates a huge amount of concentrated energy in one place that could be married up to load.
Just something that I think would be relatable for our audiences is thinking about yourself as a kid, reading Isaac Asimov, reading science fiction, now talking to your daughter about how we've kind of caught the tiger by the tail. Tell us about that.
Well, you know, we were talking about this the other day, and we're talking about this issue of fear. And as a kid, I was fascinated by these books from Isaac Asimov. He wrote these robot books, science fiction books. Some of you may have read them. And he wrote the rules of being a robot. And these were rules that were essentially to protect society. And the first rule was the robot could never harm a human being. And yet, a couple of speakers ago, you heard somebody talking about using the robot primarily for that purpose, right? So the construction of AI here is designed to do the very thing that in our fiction world we said was the first thing that should never be done. And so, look, I get it, right? We have to defend the nation. Other people are going to do it if we don't. But to me, it makes it hard to explain that something is going to be benign when, in fact, in their world, both from a fiction and from a reality standpoint, the technology is presented to them in a non-benign way. And in fact, in a way that is deliberately antagonistic to human life.
Joe, let's talk about solutions. Batching, tiering, surplus. Yep. What are some of the ways that you're addressing, alleviating some of the problems that people face across the country?
Yeah, cool question, Mike. Look, I think, I just said a moment ago, I worry about fear overtaking the discussion to the point that nuance is lost. The fear, if I'm going to think about my particular sector, is that AI, because of the data point I gave you before, is going to suck up all of the energy that's available. Prices are going to increase. There's going to be reliability events, not enough for the rest of us. And so that narrative is based on some fact. We have seen price increases in peak capacity costs. So in the system, we think about, call it 5 to 50 hours of the system that are peak hours. Think about your coldest day in the winter, your hottest day in the summer, and the system is designed to cover those peak events. That's less than 1% of the hours, but it drives a big chunk of the costs. If we're able to cover that 1%, in other words, if we could talk to data centers and back off during that 1%, right? Do something else. Use your backup generation at the facility. Use a battery, whatever it is. If you could manage that, you want these guys on the system as much as possible. Why? Because for the other 99% of the hours, your system in America is vastly underutilized. I told you today, Philadelphia is running on 3,500 megawatts. The system's designed to run on 9 or 10,000 megawatts. That means you've got a bunch of wires, transformers, substations, all this fixed cost stuff in Philadelphia that's not being utilized today. 80% of the time in America, 50% of the power plants don't even run. But if we could use that slack in the system, this is like you owning a hotel, right? You own the electric grid with all this capacity. Think about you owning a hotel with all these rooms where most of the year the rooms are empty. What do you want to do is fill those rooms up. The more we could utilize the system, the lower we could reduce the per usage cost, which you pay for in your favorite bill of the month, your light bill, that is per kilowatt hour, you get a slice of those fixed costs. What if you could share that with data economy customers, but they weren't breaking the system at the peak? That's the thing we're working on at Constellation. One of the great things, and Mike alluded to this, is we're starting to think that maybe the answer isn't an answer we could bring. Yeah, batteries, storage, all of the stuff that we could have on site running backup generation is part of it. But what if a data center in Philadelphia during that 1% of the hours doesn't actually do the work? What if it moves that whatever computational work it's doing at the speed of light to a data center in Arizona, and it does your kid's homework at that moment in time instead of being done at the... Your kid won't notice. It'll take about 35 milliseconds longer, not going to compete with the kid's ability to do it, and we could actually make the system work. So look, we have to get into this next tier of conversation, or the fears are going to shut us down. And the fears will be bounded all by these local things that are affecting us each as individuals, our perception, what's happening in our local community. But we could shut this thing down and damage the nation. We have lost the ability in this country to have nuanced conversations when fear is present. And that's the biggest thing, to take us back to where you started, Mike. When I look at these verdicts, and what is that? What is it really? If we lose the ability to have a nuanced conversation about complicated things, we're going to lose more than we could afford to lose in this country.
Amy's going to kill me, but I have to sneak in one smart brevity question. How concerned are you about the war and the effect that it could have on data centers that we assumed would be built in the Middle East?
Oh, huge. I mean, look, it's hard for us to envision what the end of this is going to be. But if I were to ask for a show of hands, who thinks it's going to be absolute peace? My guess is it's going to be similar to the show of hands about who loves New Jersey. It's going to be a tough poll. And in all likelihood, that means that people are going to continue to live under this umbrella of regional conflict in the Middle East. Before now, the thought was, if America gets constipated in its ability to build data centers, we'll build them with our allies in the Middle East. But who's going to ensure a $20 billion facility in the Middle East anymore that can be taken out by a $5,000 drone? And that's the reality we face. If America is going to lead, it's not going to be Europe that is going to be building the data centers. And I'm afraid to say, in all likelihood, it's not going to be in our partners in the Middle East anymore in light of what has just occurred. Meaning our leadership here in getting this right here is much more important than it was 3 weeks ago.
To end on a slightly sunnier note, you are a gardener. What has gardening taught you about life?
You know, I love to, I'm a gardener. I don't grow anything that you could eat. In fact, it would pain me terribly to see anything that I grew actually get consumed. I'm a flower and plant gardener. And I don't know that it teaches me, and it helps me to manage life, Mike, to be honest with you. I'm able to go to a place where I'm universally loved, and I seem to be making progress constantly, and it's beautiful, and great place to have a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning. So hopefully you all have that in your lives.
Love the constant progress. Thank you, Axios Live, and thank you, Joe Dominguez, for a great conversation.
Thanks,
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
You were great.
Welcoming back, Axios publisher Nicholas Johnston.
Hello again. Great to be back on stage. Thanks for sticking with us. We're in the thick of a lot of great conversations. Very excited to thank this next partner. Accenture Federal Services has been a great partner of Axios for many years, and I'm very excited to continue a conversation I've been having about AI and government with the CEO of Accenture Federal Services, Ron Ash. Ron, welcome back to the Axios stage.
Doing?
Through the beam of sunlight into the big chair.
Should have brought sunglasses for this section.
It's been a couple months since we talked, so why don't you catch me up on like what's exciting in your world, what's new?
Yeah, look, it's great to be here, and thank you for hosting such an incredible session. What's new for me is really focusing on helping our federal clients move past piloting and testing AI and moving to the deployment phase, right? When I look across our clients in the federal space, I see a lot of testing, but I don't see as much deployment. We have a deployment deficit is what I call, where our agencies need to move better, faster to get these things out in production and driving real change for the citizens, the warfighters.
What's the holdup?
Look, I think there's a lot of things. I think agencies are used to moving at a regular pace, and the technology is moving so fast that they need to get used to it, right? And here's the reality, right? You can wait forever for the best model, but the models are always going to get better. So what we need to do is start thinking about how do we truly use AI to change the way the government works and drive that change and be ready for the models to change and improve as they go.
What has that testing journey been like as you bring these tools into federal agencies? Like, do the light bulbs go off and they see the light, or are you convincing them? Like, tell us a little bit what it's like to try and deploy AI.
Yeah, so look, I think every agency does things a little bit differently, but I'll give you an example just to bring it to life. So we're working on a cutting edge capability for an agency that does investigations, right? And they wanted us to digitize that entire process. What's interesting, you think about, we've all seen movies where agents are in rooms and they have like all these physical documents, text messages, videos, and they want to use AI to streamline that entire process. And what we're doing is we're working with the investigators to build an agentic framework for the investigators to actually have agentic agents go out and do deep research and investigations across multiple data sets while they're doing something else, to scan through the hundreds of hours of video to get to the 10 seconds that matter, and automatically connecting these.
So all that information, all that evidence gets ingested into the LLM model, and then the investigators will have a conversation with it.
Yeah, they can have
conversations.
What do
you see?
Yeah, and it recommends, like, these are the things, these are the people of interest, this is why. And what's interesting about this whole thing is this technology didn't exist 6 months ago.
Right.
And we're going to deploy it in less than 6 months.
Is this an example of an agency where the light bulb went off and they're transitioning from test to actual use case? Why are they different, so innovative than some of the folks who are going slower? What separates them?
Great question. So they started thinking about it a year ago, right? And I have this general rule of thumb that I talk to agencies about. It's called the 9-to-1 rule. And you spend, for every $1 that you spend on AI technology, you have to spend $9 on 3 things. Looking at your process and getting rid of processes that didn't need to exist when you have AI, looking at your data and getting your data right, not thinking about just the data you have, but all the data that's available across different systems now that AI exists and you can have data fabrics. And third, and most importantly, is your people, right? And thinking about how your people are going to integrate into this system and have an agentic workforce. And if you think about like that example I gave with the agency, they are working on what we call human in the lead, right? And it's not building AI systems for a human to be in the loop. No human wants to be in the loop. They want to be in the lead. And what we did was working with this agency is identify the agents that were going to be in the lead, and they completely reimagined the process because they felt empowered, and they are empowered, and they helped us understand what could they use AI to do so they could focus on more important missions that require their impact.
This is similar to conversations I've had with lots of folks around AI at a lot of the Axios AI Summits, about where it's not like you're not buying AI like in a box off a shelf and just installing it on your computer. You have to start from scratch and rethink like everything you do and do it differently from the beginning. I mean, it sounds like that's the exact same way, the same journey you're on with federal government.
Exactly, yeah, and so rather than like what I've seen agencies do where they get stuck in the AI spiral, is they're like, let's fix the 16th process in a 20 process step, right? And that while that might be optimal for that one process, the reality is you probably don't need 20 steps anymore.
Right.
And so spending that time up front to truly rethink, and what we do, we're a federal agency, but we have a huge commercial arm, and we bring in those proven tools and techniques and those engineers that understand how to help ask the right questions. I mean, the reality is you sit in a room with the clients, you say, let's start this meeting with what if and why not.
Right.
Like, let's get away from what if we could do it this way, and why can't we?
Or why do you do it this old way?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, and the reality is 9 times out of 10 when they're like, why do you do it this way? It's like, well, that's what I was told by the person before.
We started in the Civil War doing it that way, right?
And like, again, the most important thing to remember is we're getting out of a cycle where you spend a bunch of money for 3 to 5 years building a system and then letting it run for 10 years. I truly believe we're moving into an era where you're going to build a system and you're going to replace it in 12 to 18 months because models are going to get better, you're going to move, you're going to have access to different data, you're going to change your workflows. And that's a completely different mindset for the government to be thinking.
What makes the federal agency leaders who get it? Like, why are they figuring it out? And so how can other leaders, like, what lessons can they take from the folks you've worked with who are like, I see how I can do this?
Number one thing is people, right? And that's the thing is people, you can't throw technology at this problem, right? Technology works, but you always have to understand how are you going to get the people to accept and deploy these capabilities. And the reality is when I was listening to Optum Health, I mean, that was some great examples of what he was talking about. You could tell that he thought through this and deploying it through the people and getting them to understand what their work is going to be. They're not threatened by the work. They're seeing themselves in the future. And they're really being able to design it so they're able to do the work that they want to do, not the work that they have to do.
It's still human-led. There's a human at the end of the process and inside that process. For folks in the room here who either work at federal agencies, maybe try to sell these kinds of technology into federal agencies, what's the advice you would give to them to be like part of the solution to help speed this process?
Yeah, so a couple things. First off, I mean, this is a call to action for all of us. And, listening to the speakers before me, like, if we think about our adversaries, and specifically China, they're not doing 9-month procurements, dealing with protests, and doing bake-offs across technologies. They are singularly focused on solving and driving models at scale across their government. We have to do the same. We have to come together. We have to unite as a public-private partner and bring the solutions that the government can do. And then when they build it, so for example, that investigation thing, once we build that for that agency, they plan to scale it vertically across every part of investigations. And the point being, that blueprint should be the investigation approach for all of the federal government. Why would we build something else, right? And so when we start building these scalable tools, the government should pick it up and scale it across each one of the things. So what we need to do as an industry is not try to sell them the same thing 10 different times. Help the government see that once we build this case management solution, or once we build this at claims management, let's go use this at CMS. Let's go use this at other agencies where you only have to tweak it versus rebuilding it.
Take a much more holistic approach. If it works in this one place, it can work anywhere else, and we need to move quick. Like urgency is a key. Before we get the hook here, I want to end on one AI thing as well. Tell us a cool thing how AI is like collapsing these kinds of things and speeding research in the world that you've been working in.
Okay. So I hope all of you in the room have heard about the Genesis mission. If you haven't, you should look at it, because it's, in my mind, it is probably the single most important thing this administration has done. They call it the Manhattan Project 2.0, but effectively it's bringing together, we talked about data sets earlier, it's bringing the best data that our country has at the national labs to be able to train models to change the way scientific research is being done. We are super proud, and I think about it all every day, because we're building the data platform that the labs can use to be able to run these experiments.
Frontier science, right?
Crazy. Like, how do we come up with new rare earth minerals? Or if there are rare earth minerals that we can't find or we don't have enough of, how do we build digital trends to identify different minerals to use? I mean, I can keep going, but like, it is the most important thing. If you're not part of it, you should be part of it. As a public-private partnership, we should all be investing, because this is our singular approach to fight against our adversaries.
And it speeds research, collapses decades into years,
weeks
into weeks even. That speaks to the sense of the urgency.
It has to, right? And so you look at it, and as a nation, this is our chance, right? This is our time. We have the best models. We're putting the best data on it. We need to take advantage of it.
Words to live by, Ron. Thanks for being here. Thanks to Accenture Federal Services for making today possible, and the conversations continue.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Thanks, man.
Thanks.
And now, a message from our sponsor.
The machine is learning everything. What you search, what you scroll, what you fear, what you want. It predicts, generates, responds. But it doesn't care. The machine doesn't feel hesitation. It doesn't understand trust. It doesn't recognize the weight of a decision. People do. At Allison, we don't chase the noise. We decode it. We use AI to reveal the emotions beneath the signal, the tension shaping culture before they become headlines. Then we do what machines can't. Craft the story, shape the meaning. We prepare for what's next. Because the future won't be won by AI alone. It will be won by the humans who know how to interact with it. And that's exactly what we do best.
Welcoming back, Ina Fried.
One of my favorite parts that we do at Axios AI Summits, at all of ours, is show you some of the technology in action. Because we're always talking about it, we want you to see some of it. So for this next demo, we're going to start with a video, maybe a little disconcerting. We'll be back to explain what happened in just a second.
Hey, Hartley, good to meet you. Thanks for joining us on stage at the Axios AI DC Summit.
Happy to be here. It's important to highlight how everyone's vulnerable these days.
Sorry, I'm a minute late. Another call ran a bit long. All good. We were just talking about how AI is industrializing the fraud economy. Perfect. This demo will show how easily AI can manipulate identities. It's wild. Hi, everyone. Just jumping in. Are we set for the demo?
Yes, quick demo first, then conversation.
That was concerning for a couple reasons. First of all, that's way too much of me. But also, I think we all know deepfakes are becoming a reality. I think the sound was a little off, but in reality, those were synced perfectly that you couldn't tell. Look, we've all been talking about deepfakes for a while, and it's been an issue for a while. I think what's changed is the ease and the scale. I want to talk more about it with the folks that helped create this video. So please welcome Hartley Thompson, the CEO of MicroLink. Great to see you.
Nice to see you as well.
In real life, the real you, not the AI you. I mean, we all know deepfakes are an issue, have been an issue. What has changed significantly in the last little bit? And then we'll get into sort of where we are on dealing with that reality. But explain where we are. What is the reality in terms of deepfakes?
So the reality of where we're at and what has changed, one of the reasons why my video, for example, was very clearly a deepfake was because we wanted to showcase how the difference in quality of deepfakes we've seen. So that was a deepfake we would have seen about 6 or 7 months ago. All of your video deepfakes were actually what we're seeing now, which is much, much more sophistication powered by the Gen AI LLMs. And it's democratized fraud at scale.
And so 2 things about that I think are really important. One is it used to be expensive to do. The cost is now trivial.
Correct.
And as a result, it used to be targeted, really high-end fraud. Now, because the cost is approaching zero, really anyone in this room could and probably will be attempted as a victim of that.
That's correct. So what Gen AI has enabled is going from not needing a nation state sponsor or a multinational organization to sponsor fraud. Now anybody with a laptop can create exactly what we just showed. So they can impersonate a person, they can create a fake document, create a fake video, create fake audio. It's really anything that you need to fake for fraudulent purposes can be done now very quickly and very cheaply. So the cost of committing fraud is basically nothing now, but obviously still the cost of not catching fraud is still very expensive.
So let's talk about, obviously very concerning, but let's talk about how we deal with that world, because there's a few different approaches that I think all are important. I don't think any one strategy solves it.
Right.
Let's talk first about the piece that you all work on, but then there's some broad technical stuff from verified video to media literacy that I also want to get into. But I think we have a video that shows some of what you do.
Yes.
What is the technical approach you all take?
So I'll try to simplify it as much as possible. So for anyone that's familiar with KYC, which is traditionally known as Know Your Customer, so that was built on a point-in-time identity verification. So now what we're doing is we've transitioned to what we call Know Your Actor, or KYA. So what that really means is you can't just do a static one point-in-time verification. You have to use 3 layers. So at the first layer, you're usually looking at the point of interaction. So in addition to actually identifying the face, you're also analyzing for Gen AI defects or artifacts that clearly show that this is a deepfake video that no human eye can detect. Second is you're looking at the point of interaction or what's going on around the interaction. So you're looking at the device. So you're looking to see, is this device behaving in a manner that's not human? And when I say human, I mean in a non-permissioned way, because we're also seeing the increase of the use of agents that are actually permissioned by people. So that's why it's important to understand the actor, who can be the person behind the actual agent that's trying to commit a transaction. And then the third is just ongoing and continuous intelligence. So it's no longer okay to just say, this is the point in time that we know this person is, but you're also looking at, we know this person is from their first onboarding journey or interaction all the way to their 1,000th transaction with a bank, for example.
And some of what I've seen companies that are tackling it from this perspective do, whether it's security companies or even people running platforms, is, okay, you know, obviously we can't just trust your ID. We can't trust a generic video of you.
Correct.
But we'll ask you to say certain things in real time. Is that a solution today, and
No.
why not?
Because as we saw, that can be easily spoofed and faked. So for one, there's a lot of information about every one of us in this room online. even information that we might think is personal that nobody has access to, you can gain access to that with just a few dollars on the dark web, for example. Then you layer that in with being able to use and mimic someone's voice. If you're someone that's very active on social media, all a fraudster needs is essentially 20 to 30 seconds of you talking, and they can do a whole conversation with your voice. So the type of fraud that you're talking about, which is account takeover fraud, that is now increasing a lot because you can just impersonate everything about a person digitally.
And there are a lot of systems that are still based on that, including from banks, credit card providers, people that I think would know better still have systems that require me to call in and say I'm who I am and give some highly classified secret information like what street I grew up on or my mother's maiden name, which are also easily found online.
That's correct. So there is a big movement to move towards what we're doing now. And like I mentioned about just continuous identity verification, but a lot of these enterprises have legacy systems where they've invested a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of people have been trained in their companies on these. So it's going to take a while, but eventually everybody is going to have to use a multi-layered approach to protecting digital trust.
And I want to talk about a couple other industry-wide things that I think don't necessarily contradict or instead of what you're talking about, I think there are other things that can be a big part of this. One is the idea of verifying media at the moment of capture.
Yes.
So Adobe and others started this content authenticity initiative several years back. I was super early to write about it because I said, this is going to become increasingly important. So one is, can we sign this was a real video captured on a camera and then verify any changes that are made to it? One of the downsides of that is you have to have critical mass before that gets interesting.
Correct. And also you need to know who is going to pay for that. That's one of the things that kind of gets lost, but yes, that's
well, talk about both some of the issues around payment, although presumably if it got built into the iPhone and the Android camera, we'd probably have gotten it paid for.
Yes, true.
What are your thoughts on verifying content at the source as part of it?
I think it's very important, and to be clear, that's not specifically the place that MicroLink plays in, but I do think it's very, very important. I mean, if you're looking at the current war right now, if you look at X, any kind of social media platform, I mean, I look at deepfakes and see fake videos for a living, and there's still 7 out of 10 videos where I'm not even sure if what I'm seeing is real. So I think verifying videos from a media perspective, from a personality perspective, when you think about celebrities, for example, we're starting to hear a lot of chatter around doing that. So I think it's important, but I can't say that I've come across a company that's doing it at scale. And I think it goes back to what I said is the business model seems to be more of the challenge. And then also, you look at social media companies where, I mean, their business model is around being able to drive more and more engagement, and a lot of the fake videos get a lot more engagement. So it's a dual-sided challenge that I'm not sure I have a good answer for.
And what do you think about the role of media literacy and really educating the public of this is what the technology is capable of today, particularly when it comes to things like, the grandparent scam where convincing sounding calls grandparents, says, I mean, now it can look and sound convincing. How important is media literacy, not just to protect seniors, but kind of all of us?
I think media literacy is very important in that aspect. Like, I would love to see more and more media talking about what I consider to be a fraud epidemic, and has shifted from just targeting enterprises and financial institutions to now, like you mentioned, it's no longer just your 92-year-old grandmother or your 80-year-old grandfather. It is people of all ages, all demographics, all around the world are falling victims to a lot of these fraudulent scams. So I also think, how do you think about the victims of these scams and creating a safe space for them to say, this is what I actually fell victim to, instead of once they lose $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, they're ashamed to talk about it. So I think it's a mix of media literacy, but also I think more victims being able to come out and say, this is what happened to me and this is how I fell victim to it. So for example, I mean, I'm not big on social media, but I don't see a lot of content on social media where someone's saying, raising their hand and saying, I fell victim to this scam, watch out. Here are some of the things that you should be alert about. So I think should be both media literacy, but also the population telling their own stories as well.
Before I let you go, we're in D.C. Like, what role does regulation play? Like, not only are we not seeing a lot of laws at the federal level, but we're even seeing this administration issue deepfakes of its own.
Right.
What do you think of that and the need for regulation?
It's a great question. I'll caveat that I'm not a regulator or a lawmaker, but I do think some kind of regulation is needed to really protect the public from what's happening, because it's only getting better and better and better every time a new model comes out. So I don't know what that regulation looks like or what the policy should be, but I do think whether it's government institutions, whether it's companies that are marketing or advertising, I do think it should be made pretty clear that what content is being created is actually a deep fake and not real, and there needs to be some regulation around how those are used, both on the consumer side and on the public side.
Well, unfortunately, we're going to have to leave it there. Hartley, Thompson, thank you so much. Hopefully, you prevented at least a couple people here from falling victim.
I hope so. Thanks.
Thanks.
It's fun.
Here he is again, Axios publisher Nicholas Johnston.
Oh, yes, here he is again. A huge thanks to this next partner of ours. Adobe has been supporting this event since the very beginning, long ago in 2023. And so I'm very excited to welcome, for a view from the top, conversations from Adobe, their Chief Legal Officer and Executive Vice President of Legal and Government Relations, Louise Pentland. Louise, welcome to the Axios stage. Hello, good afternoon.
Thank you.
We've been having a running conversation with Adobe since the very beginning, so I think it would be great, like, for an update on, like, how is AI reshaping your business?
Great, well, thank you. It's great to be here, so thank you for having me. Look, Adobe's been supporting the creative industries for over 40 years. You know, in the last 15 years, we've really been leaning in on AI as a way to infuse AI into the creative product suites that we have. And so, you know, having had quite a long journey already in the AI sphere, we've now got all of our creative products, all our flagship products that you probably know and love, Photoshop, you know, Acrobat, PDFs, have AI capabilities in them. So we've learned a lot about how AI really intersects with both software, but also the creative communities.
Mm-hmm. What have been the implications of that then? Like the conversation we just had about deepfakes was an element of it. How do you think about the creative intersection with AI?
Yeah, so ultimately, you know, AI in our view is not replacing human creativity. I think that's sort of point number one. AI it's truly an accelerator for creativity, and we want to see that be the premise in which we all galvanize around, so that we are really thinking about AI both from the creative's perspective, but also from a commercially safe, responsible perspective. Right. And that's one of the things that we've done with our Firefly product that we built, because we heard from a lot of our creators that they wanted a safe, IP-safe environment. So we built Firefly, and through that, we've had over 30 billion generated images through that technology.
I think we have a visual example of that. I wonder if we can show that. You can maybe walk us through like what it means to protect that kind of IP.
Yeah, so I think, is it coming up?
Buffering somewhere on the internet.
Yeah. You know, so I think the example we're going to show here. So this is a piece of artwork from a gentleman called Kent Kiersey. He created this, and he now works at Adobe. But he created this before he worked at Adobe. It's called A Single Piece of Cheese, American cheese. And one of the things that, you know, his experience through creating this was he wanted to copyright this piece of work. Now, this was generated in part with AI, but created predominantly by him. So it was his creativity and then he used AI to enhance it. He takes this to the Copyright Office and tries to get copyright protection for it. And initially it gets rejected because the Copyright Act has the word human in it. And so he then spends 20 plus hours, dissecting his creativity, and then he takes that back to the Copyright Office. He hires a law firm. This is over 5 months. And eventually he actually gets one of the first AI contributed copyright protective pieces of artwork. And so this is, I think, highlighting that this is a very fraught path for creators right now because we don't have clear rules and regulations around this. It's net new for most of our regulators. And so, trying to take what is existing law and applying it to today's environment, that's where it gets really interesting and tricky, I think, from a copyright perspective.
I mean, is this path perhaps a template for, I wouldn't say the process, spending all that time, spending all those months, spending all that money is the way to do it, but does this process provide a template maybe for a regulatory or a rules framework to start to think about?
I think it would. I think what it will hopefully ultimately do is create a path of framework for which others can follow, and hopefully have an easier and smoother path than what poor Kent had to go through.
I mean, as a company that works so much with creators, what do you hear from them as far as the importance of this? How are they thinking about that, and how do you then try to help them?
Yeah. So look, I think the reality is so much of the creative industry is over it's like 4.2% of the U.S. GDP, and if we don't support the creative industries, we are creating a fairly massive issue for I think the U.S. ambition on being first in AI. But also, I think, for these communities and their economic well-being, which needs to be propelled with, I think, the right protections for creators. And so ultimately, I think, where this is going and what needs to happen is very clear framework for how we can ensure that those creators are being protected in this AI environment. And what we see and what we hear is that they want to use AI for the most part, right? But there's this anxiety around, well, if I just put my life's work in and allow it to be trained on AI models, am I basically just giving up all my future income?
Right.
That cannot be the outcome that is persistent in this environment, and there are clear solutions to that.
I mean, we're here in Washington with a lot of folks involved in AI policy. Is there a bit of advice that you would give them as they think about what they might do to help on this cause?
Yeah, and look, I've spent time having these conversations already, and I think we've got to evolve the focus, which understandably has been how do we stand up these AI capabilities and ensure the United States stays in this lead for AI. But we have to be very aware of, all of the constituents that, are sort of part of this environment. And so when regulators think about this, they often are thinking about, things like what we've heard on stage today, data centers, fraud. They're all important, but let's not forget about the other really important part, which is these LLMs need content. They need data to train on. And if we cut off the stem of creativity, then what's the future going to hold? And I think it becomes quite short-sighted if we overlook these constituents, which has not been given, I think, enough focus and enough time.
What do you see on the horizon as you look at the tools, as you look at what creators are doing? Like, what's coming next that's interesting to you, that's exciting?
Yeah, look, I think there's a lot, right? I think what we see and what we hear is that the creators are very excited about how, like, for example, Adobe tools are driving their ability to generate work faster. We're working with a lot of media companies, for example, and they're seeing the benefits of our Firefly product where they can put their IP into a safe environment and generate, content from, IP characters that they've created in a much faster and much more, I think, broad perspective on their creation, but it still requires that human ingenuity. It still requires that human interaction. It's not replacing it, but it's actually putting it on in their industry where it's highly competitive and getting products out on a regular basis on a much faster timeline.
You see these tools evolving in a way that still keep the human at
100%,
the center.
100%. This, in our view, will not replace the human creativity. It's really a sort of an accelerant or, an enhancement.
Well, as a human, I'm very happy to hear that the humans still have a role to play. Before we get the hook here, I'd love to end on one fun AI thing. Tell me something interesting and cool you're using in your life with AI.
Well, aside from obviously helping, my 13-year-old do her math homework, which is way above my limit, one of the things I love is true crime, one of the things I've been doing recently, especially when I have downtime, sitting at an airport or whatever, is you can use AI to actually create a crime investigation. That it will take you on a journey that you have to solve a mystery, like you're the detective.
You ask the AI for a mystery for you to solve.
Yes, and then it'll give you options of like who do you want to interview, who do you want to interrogate, and it ultimately is about you trying to solve the crime. It's so fun, and I highly recommend it.
What is your case close rate against the robot?
It's pretty high, but that's because I'm a little bit obsessed.
I've asked this question of a lot of people, and this is probably one of the best answers I've gotten so far. Louise, thank you so much for sharing your expertise. Huge thanks to Adobe for making today possible. Stick around. We'll continue.
Thank you.
And now, a message from our sponsor.
DFR2 area is clear. Launching DFR2.
A seismic shift is underway for how the service operates.
Drones made by Skydio.
First of its kind program is taking flight.
Launching a new drone program.
As first responders.
Launching from the roof of police headquarters.
They're not just going to outages, they're trying to prevent them.
When the emergency call comes in, every second counts.
The drone spotted him in the woods.
This life-saving technology, gearing up their drones with flotation devices.
Used to help save swimmers at sea.
Unleashing American drone dominance.
Drones commonly used in the military. This one right here, called the Skydio, is our most popular one.
Nothing has provided the level of confidence that the X-10 does.
The DFR drone actually beat me there.
When he saw the drone, he knew he was caught.
On the ground. Drone pilot got on scene, observed a guy holding a shotgun.
Here they're using the drone to locate someone.
Hey, the drone has somebody running through the woods.
We need to have the latest technology that's on the battlefield.
We're not waiting for the future of policing, we're building it.
Police say it is a game changer.
Sheriff calls the drones a game changer.
Game changer.
Game changer. A game changer.
One of the most significant paradigm shifts I've seen in my career.
Hi, I'm Ashley Gold, Senior Tech Policy Reporter at Axios.
And I'm Maria Curi, a Tech Policy Reporter here at Axios.
Every Friday, we take over the Axios AI Plus newsletter.
We cover all of the biggest debates on AI policy here from Washington, D.C.
We cover everything from federal agencies to the White House to Congress.
You're going to want to subscribe to our newsletter at Axios.com and make it to all of our events and AI summits.
Next one is June 3rd in New York City.
Next one after that is December 3rd in San Francisco. Thank you so much for being here and enjoy the rest of the program.
Here she is again, Ina Fried.
That really was Ashley and Maria, in case you were wondering if it was a deep fake. Well, I don't know, some of you may have heard, but someone's having a birthday. The country's turning 250. In honor of the anniversary, the National Archives used AI to help bring together one of its most important exhibits, the one that tells the American story. Here to talk more about how AI is helping preserve, analyze, and explore historical records are Patrick Madden, Brian Heisey, and Frank Cordes. So we're going to talk a lot about the exhibit and how the technology works, but help set the stage for your job kind of taking this vast collection of documents and making it relevant and accessible to a new generation.
Absolutely, it's great to be here. First, I'd like to talk about the National Archives. You might know the Rotunda, the original Declaration, Constitution, and Bill of Rights, but the Archives is our nation's storyteller. It has 13.5 billion pieces of paper, 30 billion digital records. Born in the 1930s, it starts with the oaths the soldiers took at Valley Forge all the way to the tweets and posts coming out of the White House today. So vast number of records and documents, and with that, about 700 million of that have been digitized, so a drop in the ocean. So that's the National Archives. It does this in 40 facilities around the country, cloud, servers, and caves. But what we're focusing on is this project at the National Archives Museum in D.C. And what we were trying to do is, how do we take an analog project and turn it into a digital one and make it more accessible? We could never build a museum big enough, so we turned to technology. So the project, and you're going to start to see some videos here, the project is really to take the technology and expose to the visitors who are coming to Washington the range of topics. And so as you go into the first gallery, you have the chance to personalize your experience. We have 65 different options. You're going to pick 3. And then you'll tell us it might be flowers, UFO, and the space program. And as you go through the galleries, you are going to experience the personalization after you see what you're looking at, and then chance to build your profile from there.
And how did you decide, like, one of the key things is allowing it personalization for the benefit of making it relevant without sort of what we have a lot of today in the world, which is, I just read what I want to see. I just see what I want to see. And you end up in a filter bubble. Obviously, 3 questions is one way. That's probably not going to totally get you into a filter bubble. But what else did you do to try and make sure you want that right balance of, you know, personalization, curation, and just serendipity?
Sure. So Cortina Productions, we're a media production agency. We specialize in museums and location-based media. And we really looked at this as a gap we needed to fill. We had a major archive, a large collection of data, and we wanted to make it searchable and personable to the visitors that came in. But when we first started looking at the archives and the data, we started realizing that a lot of the records didn't have the metadata that we would need to pull that off. A lot of the records had a simple title and maybe an image, and we really needed more than that. So that's where we started looking at AI, and specifically Microsoft Azure. So we use services like OCR, computer vision, LLMs to build a contextual database that supplements what the archives has. And what that allowed us to do was really make those connections between the documents and the visitors, but it also sort of created these hidden pathways and connections between the documents that we didn't even know existed. And so to answer your question more thoroughly, the archives is not a simple problem. It's a huge data set. And I don't think a lot of people really recognize or appreciate the depth of it. And so even though you come in and you give your preferences, the results that you're getting are still very surprising and unexpected. And it's a really exciting time for museums, because a lot of museums, most of their collection is behind closed doors. The public can't see it. And these tools are going to make it possible for museums to open those doors and give visitors access to that collection in ways that we've never seen before.
I mean, as you say, it seems like the kind of thing that's super relevant to what you all do at the National Archives in terms of, it is literally just billions of documents, but also your favorite art museum probably has way more pieces than it can display. All these things can do the mission so much better if they can share more of that. And Frank, one of the things is the experience doesn't even end necessarily when you leave the museum. Talk about how you made it an experience that can continue onward.
So as visitors go through the museum, they experience 3 levels of content in the museum. They have the original documents, and then 2 levels of content that's curated content by our curators. It's that 3rd level of content that's the machine learning system that's feeding in more records related to each visitor's personal interests who have taken part in the personalization. As they've gone through the museum, at the end of their experience culminates where they get to check out and see a summary of everything they've seen. And they've been able to save documents along the way through their experience that they can then retrieve at home on the archivesmuseum.org website. You can then go in and then you put in your ticket number, and there you're able to retrieve all those documents you saved. And the beauty of this with the personalization, too, is that it's going to allow teachers to bring school groups to the museum and kind of front-load the topics that they want their students to discover in the exhibit. And even if 3 students pick the same topics, each student may have a completely different discovery. So they can then go back to the classroom and then have another discussion about the different discoveries. I've gone through this several times. I've been with the archives off and on now for 20 years. I'm finding things that I didn't know we had using the system. So it's a pretty incredible system for that.
And beyond the museum, I'm curious how you are thinking about, you have, what was it, 700 million of them are digitized? Are they all available today? Will there be a point in time where all the ones that aren't classified are available so that I can search whatever interests me?
So you can go to the National Archives website and use its catalog to access those 700 million. I think what we're learning from this exhibit is that the AI is going to help make those more accessible to the public because there'll be more metadata that it can be drawn from. So we're working towards that. 13.5 billion pieces of paper is going to take a long time, though. So I think what we're trying to do is how do we use the technology to start with this public interface in the museum and expand it to what can be available online.
And this was a long project. I think you were telling me you spent like 8 years from conception. I didn't even know AI was like a thing. And talk about what you've learned along the way, because I think a lot of us are trying to figure out how do we bring AI to the projects we're already doing. And again, your project certainly didn't predate AI as a concept, but today's generative AI wasn't what it is today.
Absolutely. At the beginning, we knew we wanted technology to help us unlock all of these other subjects that people aren't familiar with that are in the archives and the volume that's there. And so for us along the way, we came across with Cortina the use of AI as a way to make that unlock. That was long before it was cool to talk about every day.
And for you, what did you learn from this project that you think you'll bring forward? Because I'm sure this is going to be a lot of what museum exhibits, what media production looks like in the future. What are some of the things that you learned from this?
Well, for me, what I'm excited about is also through the analytics of each interactive, we can start to see what is interesting to our audience members, and that allows us to then look at future programming for exhibits, right? If there's a certain set of records that keep hitting where they're like, wow, there's a lot of interest in this, maybe this is something we should look at. So for me, again, this is a tool that I'm continually learning from, and I'm excited to see what else I get from it.
How about from your perspective, Brian, because I'm sure you're already working on the next cool projects of how do I bring things to life? Because that's kind of what
absolutely. I mean, this really gave our team an opportunity to look at some of these AI tools and come up with a pipeline that works for a record set that's as large as the archives. Not a lot of museums have record sets as large as the archives. So, it's absolutely going to be something that we're looking to use on future projects and looking forward to seeing the new updates to models and what they can do for us. As we were developing this project, there were new models coming out that were giving us new capabilities that we didn't have going into it.
Yeah, so how did you decide when, oh, that's good enough, we need to switch directions and take advantage of that versus we got to pick a technology and stick to it?
User testing. If our user testers, we would see a new model come out, we would drop it in and see how it tested with users, and if we felt like it was working well, then we made that switch.
And did you change models under the hood a few times?
Did.
And we only have a couple minutes left, but you said you had the documents, UFOs. Are they real? Not?
You have to come to the Archives Museum to check it out.
So if you want to find out whether UFOs are real or if you just want to learn more about the American story, the exhibit is just a short drive from here for the folks in D.C. For the folks who aren't in D.C. and aren't planning a special trip, you can find a lot on the National Archives website. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Kat Cammack is a leading Republican voice on the future of American innovation. Representing Florida's 3rd District, she serves on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, where AI, data, and emerging tech policy takes center stage. Cammack is pushing for rules that protect consumers without choking progress, arguing the U.S. must lead in AI, not regulate it out of existence.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for staying through the afternoon. Thank you, Congresswoman, for joining us.
Absolutely. Lively bunch.
Yeah.
I hope there is an open bar. If there is, please go get it.
Can we get some signs of life out here? Can I get a cheer? A woohoo? Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it. I know it's a long day, but it's only getting better. Now that Representative Cammack is here, let's start with the news of the day, which was going to be the White House AI framework.
Right.
But now we have a liability finding for YouTube and Meta, who were just found liable for social media addiction claims in a Los Angeles court. What is your reaction to that?
Well, I don't think anyone is genuinely surprised. I mean, when you look at the source code and how it's developed and the behavioral algorithms that are utilized on platforms, it's kind of a secret that was not so secret, right? So I don't think that this is the bombshell that everyone thinks that it is, except for it is going to give some teeth as we move forward with some of particularly the online safety bills that we're working for children in particular. So I think it's gonna be a good conversation starter and maybe a little bit more of a level setter as we navigate the differences between the House and the Senate version of the kids' online safety bills. But there's so much more work to do in this space. And when you're in a political environment where parents are concerned about a number of things, right? There's the affordability issue that every family is contending with. They're also sitting there like, is this another thing that I have to worry about? And so on Capitol Hill, people are having to make decisions of whether or not this is something that's going to get a lot of time and attention.
So back to the White House AI framework, came out last week. It's a pretty high-level document, and it seems like it's going to be up to Congress to really fill in the key details. And I know that children's safety is part of it. You're on the House Energy and Commerce Committee, which is going to play a major role in whatever moves forward on the legislative front. What do you think comes next here?
Because we all know Congress is great at details.
Oh yeah, the best.
We're so good. Looking at the framework, I think that, one, we have to appreciate that there is a good faith first attempt at really wrapping our arms around this. Because the fear that I certainly have, I know many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle have, is that Europe is going to continue to overregulate, China is going to continue to innovate, and then we in the United States will be irrelevant if we do not engage in this space. And the idea that we're not going to have any sort of framework or guardrails, that's just not realistic. But there's also the real concern that I certainly have that we're going to push innovators out of the space. And so you can't get to the point where it's just become impossible to do anything. And that's going to require some preemption, which, as we all know, is super not popular when you're talking about any issue. Every state has an idea of what they want to do, and when you're talking to your state legislators, they're hearing from constituents very close to them about how they,
thank you.
I totally ruined your subtle approach, man, sorry. He was trying to be very sneaky. So the preemption issue is going to be, I think, one of the most difficult things that we navigate. But the reality is that we're not going to be in a position where our, particularly startups, but the companies are not going to be able to have a framework for 50 different states and really survive. So we have to predict what's coming, but we have to protect the innovation in the space. And that's why, honestly, I'm to the point where I'm going to drop a bill called, right to compute, because people are scared of AI, but they're not scared of math. The inside joke is
I'm a little scared of math.
Are you scared of math?
Yeah, a little bit.
I'm just bad at math. Yeah. But, the joke is that AI, it's just math. In the end of the day, it's just math. And we need to make sure that we're protecting that innovation and giving these startups a fair shot.
So it seems like you're really sort of on the pro-innovation side of things.
Hell yeah, I am.
Yes, in the Republican Party, whereas some of your colleagues are falling more on the pro-safety a little more, ability for states to pass their own rules. Some Republican lawmakers in states like Utah have been upset at what they see as, incursions from the White House and the federal government saying, you can't pass these laws, we need to have preemption. So how are you going to square those differences within the Republican Party itself on these divergent views on AI and who's responsible for safety?
Well, it goes back to what I just said. I mean, the reality is that you can't have 50 different sets of rules, otherwise you're going to just drive that innovation overseas. And we're living in an era where people have to recognize that the currency of the future, it's data. Right? And we need to be leading in this space. I can't tell you how many of my counterparts overseas, particularly in the EU, that I speak to, and they say, we want you guys to lead in this space because we know what the heavy hand of an administrative state can do. And I will put our folks up against anyone in the world, and we will produce an incredible product. We will be the leading innovators, but we have to facilitate that environment. And I think that a lot of the fear in the space is really just because people, they don't understand the technology. We see that repeatedly in Washington. I mean, think about, when Zuckerberg had his very first hearing on Capitol Hill, like, America, really the world saw how very far behind Capitol Hill was. And instead of trying to chase it from behind, we should be blocking and tackling in the front, trying to lay a path that our folks can actually really build, develop, innovate, and create opportunities. So,
what is your level of confidence that Congress is going to be able to take the AI framework, take it back to the House and the Senate, and really come up with something that can pass and fulfill what they want to see be done?
I think this is going to require a ton of education, which for everybody in the room, I would highly encourage you to, in whatever capacity you are in, help us educate, not just members, but their teams. There's a lot of fear of the unknown because I still talk to some of my colleagues who they think of AI and honestly, a robot walking out with the First Lady today kind of...
Did that help or hurt?
Yeah. Because they were, they're like thinking this is Terminator, and I'm like, let's talk about what the capability is. The reality is that AI has the ability to do so many incredible things. It certainly, there are going to be things that we have to be mindful of and careful of. Believe me, I have asked every chatbot, I have asked every language model, I have done all the things I'm probably on some watch list, I am sure. I've asked it to do horrible things to just kind of see what the limits were. And the thing that if we don't level set and do a ton of education with the membership, we're going to be starting from a losing position and on our heels. So we really need to be proactive in educating about what the capability is, what we look to do, and really some of the realities. And this is where I think Silicon Valley and many others need to engage on the Hill. We need to get the tech bros on Capitol Hill, like stat.
They're there. They're making appearances. The Hill and Valley Summit yesterday. There's been a lot of Silicon Valley energy in D.C. lately.
But
you think we need more?
Truthfully, engaging with leadership is one thing. You've got to engage with rank and file. If you continue to just go to the speaker or others in leadership, you're missing the boat, because when you have a vote margin of 1, if you're not touching everybody, I shouldn't say touching, that's not a good thing to say in this town.
That's not what you meant.
Yeah, if you are not communicating with every single member, then you're really risking somebody with heartburn that day that maybe doesn't want to vote your way because they weren't communicated to or they felt overlooked. I think that is something that is happening, and we really need to do a better job of educating members and staff about the potential of AI and all the ways that it is really helping so many different industries and the beauty of it, honestly.
So how did you come to a place where you felt really positive about the future of AI and the promises that it holds? Because I talk to lawmakers who are on all different ends of the spectrum when it comes to this.
Well, I'm a millennial.
Same.
Yeah, so the MySpace generation gets it. We're analog enough to, communicate, but we grew up in a digital era where we really saw the evolution, and we think of this as a way to bring the next generation into the fold that other ways we couldn't, right? It's a great equalizer. When you think about some of the barriers in other industries that have been experienced just from a lack of scale, this is a way that people can compete. And I think it's just such a game changer for really leveling the playing field, particularly when you're talking about like underserved communities or rural communities. And then if you look even more broadly from the innovative side, you've got the opportunity in healthcare, in finance, in any field to really go leaps and bounds above where we've been in the past. And that's why I'm particularly bullish on it. Like I said, I believe that the future currency that the world is going to operate off of is data, which is why I think we need to go back and get a data privacy bill done first before we try to undertake a massive AI package. I think if we were to do it in reverse, we would be completely setting ourselves up for failure. So a big data privacy package, I think, is top of mind for so many. But then I think incorporating things like blockchain, we've run blockchain bills and trying to show that a digital ledger and technology can be useful. The crypto guys have been kind of commandeering that space. But if you can kind of start pulling some of the tech folks into this space, that's important.
What do you hear from folks on the ground in your district about AI? I mean, we've seen a lot of polls where people are worried about their jobs, they're worried about their privacy, they're worried about the environment or data centers being in their backyard. Given that you're pretty excited about AI, what are you telling folks back home who maybe aren't so excited?
Well, I represent the University of Florida. Go Gators. There's one Gator right there. There's always one in the room. There's always one in the room. Our brackets are effed. And y'all, I picked High Point too, so I was looking really good on day one.
I wasn't expecting to talk about basketball, but did you use AI to fill out your bracket?
Absolutely not. My husband did though, and he picked based off of mascots. Yeah, not his strong suit. But representing University of Florida, we have an incredible university that, through the leadership of the board and really the community, we hired right out the gate 150 AI experts in various fields and embedded them into every college in the university because we recognized early on that we needed a workforce that was going to be trained and capable of operating in that environment. Outside of the University of Florida, it's predominantly agriculture, North Florida. When you talk about ag in my district, my farmers, which by the way, agriculture, the original innovators, right? Always figuring out how to do more with less. They're using precision agriculture. And I'll just point to this, see and spray technology, for example. We can have one farmer on an operation using AI for see and spray technology in real time as they're going through the field where AI is telling the farmer and subsequently the tractor how much of a deficit that particular crop, that one single plant as they're going over is in a particular nutrient, what herbicide it needs to apply, what the soil conditions are around it. And that right there is AI in action. That is something that is very exciting, particularly for agriculture. And my district being predominantly ag, that's a real help for them. And in all the schools, they're adopting different curriculum in this space. I see my folks being very, very bullish on it. I do think that the data centers are a little bit controversial at the moment, but I do think that there is the reality that has to be faced of, everyone says that they want something, but then there's the attitude of not in my backyard. But we also have to consider that we can't do this without that, right? So.
Unfortunately, with that, we are out of time, but we appreciate you coming on stage so much, Representative Cammack, and we hope to talk to you more soon.
I appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
Amjad Masad is the co-founder and CEO of Replit, the platform making it possible to build software from anywhere by anyone. He's at the forefront of the AI-powered coding shift, turning programming into a more accessible, real-time collaborative experience. Masad represents a new era where creation moves as fast as ideas.
Yeah, we can clap. That's a good thing to do. So let's start with this. I think everybody here has heard the term vibe coding. I think it has become this ubiquitous term, particularly in the last couple months. For lay people, how do you describe what vibe coding is?
So typically when people make software, you have to do this very complicated, very hard thing called coding, which is you're typing in symbols into a computer. Very few, perhaps 0.5% of the population of the world know how to code. It's very difficult to learn how to code. It kind of fits a certain personality and a certain type of person. It takes a lot of time. You used to take 4 years computer science degree in order to learn how to code. But making software is such a fun, joyful, gainful, profitable thing to do that many people would want to be able to do. And we started our company even 10 years ago, before vibe coding, with the express mission of creating 1 billion new software developers. Now, with the rise of AI, what happened is AI turned out to be really good at coding. AI can generate, can translate ideas, prompts, very simple ideas, like make me an e-commerce site to sell dog food, into lines and lines and files of code that can run and compile and can translate into an app. So vibe coding goes from sort of code by, so the term comes from like code by feeling. You don't have to really be concrete and logical about it. You can express yourself, similarly express yourself to a human colleague or a designer. You can say, I want it to look like this or that, and the machine will understand it and translate it into an actual code.
Is coding the way we think about or thought about it traditionally, is that a dead art? Is that Latin?
Not entirely. So I think it depends on the domain. So I think there are domains where we need things to be provable, right? If you're working at NASA or SpaceX and you're writing software embedded for space travel, you would want to read every line of code because it's life or death, right? But
yeah, you've said, I think, you don't want your Tesla self-driving, your autopilot to be vibe coded.
Exactly. So there are situations where we really want humans to be still involved in every part of the coding process. But for the most part, when we're making a social media app, when we're making an automation, when we're making an agent, when we're making an internal tool, for the most part, bugs are not that consequential. And so being a little liberal about it, it's fine, makes you move fast. And when the bug appears, you can also fix it very, very quickly. So I don't think coding is dead just yet, but people who are building products are suddenly empowered to move a lot faster.
I've got a 15-year-old. If I said to her, you should be learning to code, if I made a mistake, like, should she know? Is there any point really in that?
So I will say, if kids are intensely interested, and by the way, it's always been the case that the kids that are interested in coding, they'll find it anyways, and they'll go into it, like I was when I was 7 years old, I started coding. But if your kid is interested in entrepreneurship, is interested in making products, I would just tell them to go to Replit and make something, right?
So let's speak of going to Replit. So OpenAI has something called Codex, which can obviously do a bunch of vibe code, kind of some of the vibe coding piece, not the full kind of developer environment that Replit has. Are you concerned that it is coming for the full developer environment that Replit has?
Right, so you have Codex, Claude Code, GitHub Copilot, there's so many products on the market. They're great products, they can generate code, but they don't typically execute that code, they don't help you secure that code. They're made for developers. They're made for people who know what they're doing. Whereas when you go to Replit, we put the agent on Rails, we create the database for you, we make sure that the database is secure, it is not accessible from the outside world. We have a lot of built-in logic to make sure that the app you're creating is exactly what you want. Whereas with Codex, you can really, it's a powerful tool, but you can shoot yourself in the foot with it. And after you've done all that coding, say with Codex, where do you actually deploy it? The agent will tell you, oh, let's create an AWS account, let's do this or that, and you'll probably make a mistake. And we've seen a lot of issues, that there was this multiple sites that allowed any agent to kind of chat, and it had a huge vulnerability because it was vibe coded. There was a YC company recently called Delve that had a lot of vulnerabilities because of the vibe coding. I think Replit is one of the more secure ones because we are designed for the normies. We're designed for the non-engineers.
I'm curious though, I mean, what's the argument for why it's not just a matter of time before those big foundation companies get to you guys? And I guess maybe the question is really kind of like, is the AI layer going to eat the platform layer? Is the platform layer going to eat them? I mean, there's an argument that they're going to become commodities too, and that you could be the winner in this. But what's the argument for why they're not just going to come and figure out what you've done?
So there's the sort of AGI argument of, the AI will do everything for us, right? If you believe that, then we have full unemployment and the world sort of ended as it were. I don't really believe in that argument. Now, if you bring it back to reality, what's happening is models are getting a lot more powerful, but still the way humans want to use computers is not as simple as I'm just like going to type a prompt and something will happen, and that's whatever will happen is out of my control. And as we've seen with all of this disasters that's happening around OpenClaw and security issues and things like that, that's not how people want to use AI. So Replit Agent 4 that just came out, for example, presents the user with a canvas. And a lot of our users like to draw their ideas and not just type them through the prompt. So people have, when I walk around our office, I see people talking around whiteboards and expressing themselves in different ways. And there's a lot of different modalities for which people want to express themselves and design software. And that's where we're 100% focused on. The AGI companies are going to get to a point, they're telling us they want computers to replace humans. Replit is about centering humans. It's actually...
So you think they're wrong?
I think they're wrong. I think they're wrong.
You think they're wrong? Let me ask about another big tech company, which is an older one, which is Apple, which seems to be taking some shots at you guys recently, basically saying that the newest version of Replit will not update in the App Store because they're concerned about vibe coding on existing apps. Is Apple the enemy of Replit right now?
Yeah, that would be very sad because I grew up.
It may be sad,
looking
but is it true?
To Steve Jobs and what Apple has created. And Apple, put this ad in 1984 against IBM, and IBM was the big bad ugly guy. I would hate for a world for Apple to be that guy. But what it's looking like is Apple is blocking our app from being updated from the App Store. They've changed the reason why about 3 times. Because every time we present technical arguments that we're not breaking the guidelines, they bring back different arguments. And so I think what's happening there is the leadership needs to figure out what their stance is on vibe coding. That being said, Replit has been on the App Store for 4 years, even before vibe coding was a thing. And so I think our app will go through review, but hopefully the leadership there need to clarify their stance about
When you say we've had arguments and they've had counter arguments, some of that's been in public. Are the two companies in backroom discussions about this stuff?
Yeah. They keep bringing back arguments to us about like why this is guideline is we're in violation of that. We present counter arguments, and every time we've convinced them that we're not breaking any guidelines, and we're in the last stages of a review. I expect us to get it on the App Store. If we don't, I mean that would be a big problem because they really don't have a reason.
Well, it would also be a big problem because your users wouldn't be able to, a lot of your users wouldn't be able to use Replit. I mean, is it it's not a life or death thing, but how big a problem if you lose that review, what happens to you guys?
Look, Replit right now is used in 85% of Fortune 500. Most people in companies are using them on their computers to design and make enterprise-grade software. Now, a lot of users like to make apps in their bed, on the commute. So the phone app is very important, and people like to manage their apps. But it is not life or death for us. I think we're going to be able to overcome it, and we're going to be on the Google Play Store, and we're going to be on the mobile web, and so we're going to direct our users away from Apple. So is that what Apple wants?
Your company, as you said, you were founded long before ChatGPT or Claude or any of that came out. What was your initial pitch to venture capitalists to raise funding? Because certainly it wasn't about vibe coding.
Right. So, like how I came to. For this to be my life mission is when I was growing up in Amman, Jordan, and I didn't have access to a laptop, and every time I wanted to learn a little bit of coding, it just the whole process was cumbersome. And I was like, like coding should be a lot more fun. It should be easier. I should be able to open a web browser or mobile phone and start coding. So I invented the first in-browser IDE, and that got me an O1 visa to come to the United States. I worked at Code Academy, which taught millions of people how to code. At Facebook, I worked on building developer tools. So when we started Replit, AI was already, there was already AI advancement applied to coding, so it was already on the horizon. But the thing that we were solving at the time was like, all right, coding is a problem, but there's a lot of other problems, which is how do you do deployments? How do you do security? How do you do package management? We solved all of this. And today, Replit is the only platform that is a full software development lifecycle, from design to prototyping, to deployment, to scaling, to maintenance. And that is 10 years of work. The agentic kind of work that we've done is really just in the past 2 years.
Since then, you guys have raised, what, over $800 million, half of which was just announced a couple weeks ago, I think. But you've also gotten into some, on social media and maybe in person, some battles, particularly over the Israel-Gaza war, et cetera. Did that experience change who you wanted to invest in Replit and maybe who wanted to invest in Replit?
I think more of the latter, who wanted to invest in Replit and who would want to take meetings and all of that. But I think that was mutually good, because I think I believe part of the reason why I'm in America is I believe in American values, Western values. One of them is free speech. I believe is if I have a point of view that is important, given my background, that I need to be able to express it. It's a humanitarian point of view. And if someone doesn't like that, I wouldn't want to work with them either. So that.
Do you feel there were investors who, because obviously you've raised multiple rounds over the years, so there's a lot of people you probably talked to and who didn't invest for one reason or another, either there wasn't room. Were there certain people who you had conversations with 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, who didn't call back this time, do you think, because of all that?
Yeah, for sure.
How did that, I'm curious, inside the company, there seems to be, not just in Silicon Valley, but in general, there's two schools of thoughts about what CEOs should do when it comes to political issues, social issues, et cetera. One school of thought is shut up and say nothing, be a cipher. And the other school of thought is no, they should say what they believe and fight for. Inside of Replit, what was kind of the reaction to their leader being out front and being so vocal?
Supportive. Like it's been supportive. And I've been, like, I think I'm of a new generation of CEOs that you know, it's not the corporate speak type of CEO. I'll just say what's on my mind. And by the way, Replit's mission itself is controversial. I get in controversy on Twitter all the time because developers attack Replit because they're saying, oh, you know, what you're doing is you're giving the ability to write code for all these non-coders. That's wrong, or you know, that's affecting our jobs or whatever. For me, it's democratization of code. And so even the mission of the company has been controversial. So I haven't shied away from my views. And you know, I'm a human first. I have background, you know, my father's a Palestinian refugee, and I grew up in Jordan. And so I'm just going to express myself as a person first, and then as a leader second.
Let me just ask, the controversy amongst developers saying, you know, you're basically putting us out of work. The AI optimist argument about the labor disruptions is always pretty much the same. It goes back to the tractor thing, right? You know, well, they created tractors and there were more jobs. In this case, so lots of developers will no longer at least have the sorts of jobs they will. What is going, and then the argument becomes, well, there'll be new jobs that replace that. Yeah. What are the new jobs that replace that?
So for example, at Replit, we have a new job that we've struggled to name it. And I think someone better at marketing than me will name it. But I call it like a vibe coding business generalist. So we have a team that goes around the company and finds inefficiencies. Obviously, everyone at Replit is responsible for using Replit to make their jobs better. Everyone with a finance, HR department, we built a lot of our own tools, and the company is very efficient. The company is at $2 million plus per head of revenue, never been below that. But still, that team's creating even more efficiencies. They'll go to the support team and they'll say, what are the biggest problems?
What are these people, what are their backgrounds? Are you hiring, for example, college grads? Which
we are hiring college grads, and I made a call.
So you're the one?
Yes, we are hiring new grads. We love new grads, especially AI native new grads that have been. So look, I think the new set of skills are going to be much more well-rounded. My generation of hackers, of coders, we were very parochial. We're like, what does the semicolon look like in JavaScript, right? Like, that's not the case anymore. What you want is people who care about product, who care about customers, who care about revenue, who care about gross margins. And so that business generalist now layer on top of that vibe coding, they're unstoppable.
As you mentioned, you grew up in Jordan. There's so much conversation at conferences like this, this is where I'll probably end with you, about who's going to win the AI race, the US or China, and we have to win the race, and the senator was talking about that earlier. Senator Hawley's here later, I bet he'll say the same thing. Okay, the US or China is going to win this. Where does that leave the rest of the world, the other countries? Where does that leave Jordan, or countries like that, whether they be in the Middle East, or South America, or Africa? Do they just become subservient to whoever the winner is?
You know, my view on large language models is that technology is, commoditizes very quickly. And the reason is, you look at the interface, right? The interface is text in, text out. It starts out very expensive. GPT-2 maybe cost $100 million when it was trained. Now we can train it for a couple $100, right? So they just like the economies of scale of these technologies will continuously commoditize. We'll reach a plateau of intelligence, and then that technology is going to be available to everyone. And you see that the big tech companies, the reason they're moving to the app layer is because that's a recognition of that as well. So look, I think what we want as Americans is for people to build on the AI stack. And I think for a lot of people outside of America, people in the Middle East and things like that, what they're doing is participating in the AI economy right now. They don't have to train machine learning models just yet, but I think in 10 years' time, they're going to be able to.
We're going to have to leave it there. Amjad, thank you so much for joining us.
Of course, my pleasure. Thank you.
Welcoming back, Axios publisher Nicholas Johnston.
We are in the home stretch of an awesome afternoon of conversations. Oh, I'm getting a little bit of afternoon light. Now, this is great. Thanks for sticking with us for these really great conversations. I'm very excited for my last time up on stage today. Huge thanks to Anthropic for making so much of today possible and a number of things that we do at Axios. And I'm very excited to welcome to a stage for the View from the Top conversation, Anthropic's new head of public policy, Sarah Heck. Sarah, showtime. Come on up. Hello, great to see you as always. Congrats on the new job.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, you know, as we like to say at Anthropic internally, things will never be chill again.
Right.
And that's sort of how I feel taking on the new role. But it's really a pleasure. And I really feel like we have tons of work to do. You know, our mission at Anthropic is to ensure that the transition to AI goes well. Right. And I think here on our public policy team, which is expanding here in Washington, we really get to sort of put forward what we're hearing from our users and from people around the country and around the world, and work with lawmakers to try and make that a reality. So
let's start digging into news in your world right now. What do you make of the new White House AI framework?
Yeah, you know, the Trump administration took a really positive step in putting forward an AI framework. I think it's really a call to action to Washington on an issue that everybody here cares about. Everybody's talking about it, not just this week, but all the time. And we agree there needs to be a federal framework for things like child safety and innovation and the economy and national security. And so I'm really excited to work with lawmakers and the administration on this comprehensive framework.
I mean, call to action is something like we've had your boss on stage at Axios Summits before, and he seems to, whenever he comes to Washington, be like, folks, pay attention, you're going to have to do stuff. It seems like that AI framework is a step in that direction, like the federal government's starting to pay attention and take action. So positive in your mind.
Well, I think many people have been paying attention for a while, and obviously this is AI has been a priority for the president, and I think it's increasingly a priority for the American people. We're watching people think about the data centers in their backyard or the way that kids are using AI in school. And you know, one of the things that I've been most excited about that we've been doing at Anthropic over the past couple of months is we've surveyed over 150,000 people across the world about how they're feeling about AI. And I think there are sort of you know, a bunch of positive things and also things that we need to pay attention to. I think first and foremost, in the US, over 70% of Americans want to make sure that the government plays a role in the future of AI. And so those are the people that are the constituents of the members on the Hill, probably people that staff are here that represent those people. And so I think we really need to work together. I mean, that's part of the role of my team and what we're doing. And so that's really a call to action for all of us. I think second, you know, 67% of people that use Claude have a net positive sentiment about it.
Right.
And I think that the more that people are using AI, the more that they are seeing that it is actually enhancing their lives. I think particularly we see people use it for professional excellence. And earlier this week that you guys reported on,
you're going to beat me to that
I'm going to beat you to the
question.
punch. We put out our 5th economic index, which is one of my favorite things that we do at Anthropic. And one of the sort of TLDR of that index was that the more people are using AI, the more proficient they are and the better results that they're getting. And so I think this sort of push for people to be AI literate and sort of take control of how they're using AI is actually fueling positive sentiment, and we still have to work on the things that people have concerns on.
This is a little bit about educating people. Like there's this tidal wave of transformation coming. And you'll be better equipped to understand it than participate in it if you try out these kinds of tools. You probably saw the Department of Labor even has done some stuff on like AI literacy, leaning in to encourage people.
Absolutely, and I think that that's really great. We talk a lot with the Department of Labor, and whether or not you want data on productivity or the work that we're doing on how tasks relate to work, augmentation, automation, and a wide variety of things. People want to understand how this is functioning in our economy. And part of the reason that we do the economic index at Anthropic is we want people and policymakers to have real-time data about how people are using AI.
I mean, you talk about AI familiarity. I imagine that the people who come to the National Building Museum, to the Axios AI DC Summit, are probably AI familiar. But then what do they take out of here to go back to their offices, their agencies, their bosses, for folks who maybe not are as AI familiar, to sort of to capitalize on the data that you brought?
Yeah, I think for a Washington audience, we look at all this data that we have, and I really think like there are, we don't see partisan divides in the data. We see
as far as who is using AI, or
who's using AI, who has wants government to be involved in it. One of the other stats that is concerning to me is that only 15% of people across America on both sides of the aisle have trust in AI companies governing AI. And so I think we really have to work together. I think that this is an issue that is high stakes, but a really big tent. And so I think in Washington, we often talk about like, oh, there's a narrow path to get this piece of legislation done. There's a narrow way. But I really think that there is like a huge bipartisan highway to do a lot of really important work together. And I think, also we are in this moment of intense innovation. We need to sprint on these things. And, working together doesn't mean anti-innovation. Nobody wants anybody to take their hands off the steering wheel.
Let's come back to the new job. As you look ahead, like what's your to-do list? What are your priorities? What are you going to be focused on the next week, 6 weeks, rest of the year,
the rest
forever?
Of the year, forever. I think when you go into new roles, people say, okay, you got to have like a tight 1 or 2 priorities. And I would love to say that is a luxury that I have. As everybody here knows, AI is touching every part of society. And so when we hear from our users across America, around the world, from communities, it's everything from wanting to make sure that the models are safe for users and children. It's making sure that our commitment to ratepayers and electricity, and that we're working with Congress on permitting reform. It's ensuring that we don't let China get ahead in leadership of AI. It's ensuring that we're supporting national security. And so the list seems sort of long, but we have to realize that we're in this moment that is going to create not just one generation of change, I think multiple generations of change. And if we don't act quickly across a multitude of dimensions, we're going to look back and wish that we had done a lot more.
One kind of side question on that, like especially speaking to like a Washington crowd, and you're an old Washington hand, do you feel like you're educating more about AI in this town, or do we get it now? And now the conversations are reaching that second level about what to do?
Yeah, I think probably some of both. I was up on the Hill this morning, and I had a member tell me like, "Hey, can you guys come back and give me and my entire staff like not just 101, but we want 201 now," which made me feel good. But I also think they're really digging into issues that are important, and I sort of look at the future and I think like AI hopefully harnesses the best of America.
Right.
Like the best of American ingenuity, the best of American exceptionalism, and I do feel like members on both sides of the aisle and their staffs and the civil society organizations and the think tanks around town are really sort of starting to dig in on how we can do that in a collaborative way.
Before we get the hook here, you're going to get the same fun question that everybody else gets, but you work at an AI company, so it better be a good one. It's going to be hard to beat the last one.
I know. I don't think I
from
can.
Louise at Adobe. What's a cool AI thing you use in your real life?
Okay, so the thing that I do is I ask Claude to make my meal plan every week, which I think a lot of people do.
Yeah.
But I actually ask it to parse out the shopping list, put it on the calendar for me and my husband, put on the calendar what we're eating every
agentic action. Okay.
And in the calendar invite it says what we're eating and then what the ingredients are and how to make it, so whoever gets home first can start
Okay,
the process.
that is the next level. That is an answer worthy of your new job. Sarah, great to see you. Thanks for being here. Huge thanks to Anthropic, and we're going to bring Ashley up for the big finish.
Thanks.
Michael Kratsios is a director of the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy, shaping U.S. leadership in AI and emerging tech. A former U.S. CTO, he's at the center of how government meets innovation. His lens shows where AI policy, national strategy, and global competition converge.
Hey everyone, let's get some applause going. Let's get the energy up. Thank you so much for joining us, Director Kratsios. It's a very busy week. We know you've been all over D.C. talking about the new White House AI framework. What can you tell us about what can we expect next here, and what is the first thing Congress needs to do in response?
Yeah, I think the first thing for folks here is just if I could share a little bit about what we've been able to put out on Friday. I think the gravity of it, I think, needs to be sort of appreciated. I think it's the first time ever that the administration has taken a position on a comprehensive legislative proposal for a single national framework for artificial intelligence, I think in the history of the United States. So we believe that this is a framework that is pro-innovator, pro-American family, and pro-American worker. And I think it's something that the country has expected of Washington for some time. And being able to kind of lay out the contours of what we feel one national framework can look like, I think is very important for the conversation. And even more important than that is it's a stepping stone. It's the start of a conversation with Congress where we urge them to create and draft legislation that can ultimately make it to the president's desk. So I think we're in the early innings, but it's the important sort of catalyst for I think what will be a big part of the agenda this year.
Is it your goal that Congress sends the president a bill this year?
Yes, we want to try to get it as expeditiously as possible. This is something that the American people are expecting and have been looking for, and we think we have something that is very common sense and could be very bipartisan. I think, as many of you know, as you think about the AI industry and where we are today, lots of states are taking action themselves on how to regulate AI, and over time you're sort of creating this patchwork with that creates sort of a lot of challenges for some of America's younger companies and some innovators out there that want to create great AI solutions for American people, but maybe not have the resources or the ability to be able to deal with the 50-state patchwork of laws. So the first big kind of like overarching theme of the framework is how do we create one national framework so we provide that confidence and that clarity to American innovators. But I think equally and in some ways even more importantly than that is we want to provide the important protections for America's children and empower parents in a way that they've never been empowered before by law to actually oversee what their children are doing online. As we talk to parents groups and families all around the country, we realize that, and I'll say myself, I have an 8-month-old. When my son starts using technology, I want, as a parent, to be able to have the control and the tools to be able to understand what he is seeing, what he's experiencing, who he's interacting with, what he has access to, what he doesn't. And that's kind of one of the core tenets of the child safety plank of the agenda. It's how do we re-empower parents to actually be able to have insights in the way that their children operate online. The second piece, which the president has talked about now for many months, is how do we protect American ratepayers? We are in a massive AI revolution right now, and the last people that need to sort of bear the burden of potentially increased electricity prices are everyday American families. The president was able to bring all the big data center companies together to the White House a couple weeks ago to sign the Ratepayer Protection Pledge. And there he got all the big tech companies essentially to agree to build, bring, or buy their own power every time they build a data center. So generally saying we are guaranteeing that electricity prices will not go up whenever we build a data center. And in our legislative framework, we call for Congress to make this law. So there's a lot more in there, happy to get into it, but I think those are examples of these are common sense solutions that everyday Americans expect that Congress would act on. And we think it's something that isn't particularly controversial. It's something that actually the country should be excited to embrace.
So in general, the White House has taken a very pro-innovation, pro-acceleration stance, but there's a lot of people out there, Republicans and Democrats, that are worried about AI. They're worried about the effect on their jobs, they're worried about the effect on their kids, or just how it's going to change the way we communicate with each other and the way that we express ourselves. At this sort of, fraught political moment, we have midterms coming up. Do you think that this is the right approach for the Republican Party to just be all in on the AI race? And is there anything you would say to folks who are a little more hesitant?
Well, I don't think those are mutually exclusive in any way. As I just discussed, the main planks of the agenda are all about protecting American children, re-empowering American families. It's all about creating an environment where, as data centers get built out, the people who are protected most are the American families from increased electricity prices. So what we're doing here is finding a pathway forward that is able to ensure that the U.S. continues to lead via, the great work that we're doing on all of our R&D and all of the legislative and all of the sort of regulatory structures to kind of allow for one framework, but at the same time looking for those externalities of where we see issues and being able to tactically create solutions in the ledge framework. So I do think there's an important balance. And the third piece we didn't talk about, which is equally important, is there's American creators out there that want to make sure that their work, all the great books that they've written or the music that they've created or the movies that they've created are not essentially used as outputs of an AI model for commercial purposes. And in our framework, we actually want to protect those creators and say that if a model is creating an output that uses sort of the name, image, and likeness of someone that has created a genuine copyrighted work, that they should be compensated, that it shouldn't be just something that the AI companies can do. So those are the types, again, of the common sense actions I think every American expects from their government as they try to enter this AI revolution.
So probably the most important part of the framework is preemption and the idea that state laws on AI will be preempted. That's been controversial sometimes. Republican governors in states like Utah and a couple other places, we see this down in Florida, they want to be able to pass bills like AI Bill of Rights, AI testing bills, bills for frontier AI systems. But the White House, in many circumstances has pushed back and said that doesn't sort of comport with what we want to do with AI. So how are you thinking about those tensions and making sure there's still harmony within the party?
Yes, for us, we believe that you can't have preemption without other stuff attached to it. And there has to be a give and take with both. And I think what makes the framework actually a very viable path forward for the country is that preemption is paired with all of the things that our great states and our governors care deeply about. The child safety issues, the issues around ratepayers, but also is very clear that it allows states to continue to do all sorts of rules around regulating issues that may be associated with this. And an example of that is, we're not going to be preempting the way that a individual state government can procure AI, for example. And that's something that we want them to continue to be able to do anything they would like. So I do actually think it's a tailored approach to the issue of one national framework that allows states to take action, but also provides American innovators and American families a common picture for how the tech industry will be regulated.
Have you seen any legislative approaches yet that you think would be workable solutions for what you want to see? We've got Marsha Blackburn's bill, the Trump AI Act. There's bills from Senator Hawley. There's bills from Senator Warner. There's bills from Democrats as well. And I know that House leadership is going to be working on this. And eventually it's going to have to make its way to the Senate. So what are you seeing out there that's promising, that is fitting what you're going for?
I think there are all sorts of bills that generally are aligned with where the White House is and where the president is on this ledge proposal. And I have a lot of confidence in House and Senate leadership to be able to look at what the president has put forward and find a path forward that can get bipartisan consensus. They're the experts on that, and they've been working these issues for a number of years. But I do think the North Star that the White House delivered, I think, is a terrific start in a direction that is great for the country.
What role will the White House be playing now that the framework is out and it's in Congress's hands? Will you keep meeting with folks? Will you be checking in every so often? What are you going to do?
Well, I'll start by doing lots of public talks with journalists to share the important message. But I think more importantly, we're going to continue to have strong dialogue with the Hill, both on the Senate and on the House side, work with them to best understand where they see a path forward and where we can be helpful. We're more than delighted to speak to staffers across the board, to congressmen and to senators alike. I think we want to provide an amazing solution for the American people, something they've been asking for and wanting for quite a long time now, and I think this is the president that can deliver that.
And what do you say to voters who think that the White House has really been working with some of the biggest AI companies? They've gotten a lot of campaign donations and really been welcomed to the White House in a way that, you know, in the past, in Trump 1, you know, big tech companies weren't always at the table. There was a little more tension. So what do you say to folks who maybe argue that, you know, the richest folks in the room, the billionaires, they're just getting what they want out of more sort of hands-off policies?
Well, I think for starters, I mean, you can't be a leader or try to do policy without speaking to everyone that's involved in a particular topic. So, of course, we should have conversations with everyone. But I think, secondly, the record speaks for itself. If you demand that a large technology company pay for their own power and guarantee that they won't increase the electricity rates of the communities in which they enter, that doesn't necessarily sound like you're in the pocket of that particular company. So I think the policies speak for themselves. We're looking out for the American family, for American worker, and for American innovators, and I would just look at the track record.
And what can we expect next from OSTP? Are we waiting on a quantum executive order?
Yeah. Well, look, we have a lot in store. Our agenda is a lot more than AI. Many of you may have seen the big announcements that came out of NASA yesterday. We're going back to the moon. I think we are scheduled to do a launch next Wednesday from Cape Canaveral to send the first men back to orbit the moon and come back. By 2028, we're going to have American boots back on the ground on the moon. By 2030, we're going to be putting the first elements of a moon base up. We're also going to be putting nuclear power in space. This is going to be critically important for getting us to Mars and also to power the moon base. And that's just our space portfolio. There's quite a lot of work being done in the quantum area as well, and stay tuned for more there. It's very critical for us to be leading in that domain, just like we are in artificial intelligence. We've done a ton of work on civil nuclear energy. There were 4 executive orders signed by the president in April of last year, so we're coming up on the anniversary there. But really tremendous regulatory action being taken at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission to speed up the approval process for next generation small modular reactors. And it's really part and parcel of this larger energy dominance agenda. Our office also works very closely on all things advanced transportation. The president last year signed an executive order creating a essentially pilot program for flying cars. So it was actually put out by Secretary Duffy just a few weeks ago. And during this calendar year, you'll be seeing, I think, at least 8 test sites around the country where you'll be seeing eVTOL vehicles transporting great Americans all across the country, and ultimately culminating with those vehicles available for the Olympics in 28. The president signed another executive order to make sure that we are flying supersonic again across the country. This has gotten bipartisan consensus and passed almost unanimously by the House, so they want to enshrine executive order by the president into law. So there's a pretty robust science and tech agenda, and it's amazing to see a president, I believe, that is so committed to ushering in a golden age of American innovation.
And on that note, we are out of time, but thank you, Director Axios. Before our next segment, we're going to briefly step up stage. You'll see the final guest revealed in the next video, and I'll be right back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Josh Hawley is a leading Republican voice on technology and power in Washington. The senior senator from Missouri has made reining in big tech a defining mission, pressing Silicon Valley on data, competition, and accountability. Now, as artificial intelligence accelerates, Hawley is pushing for guardrails that protect workers, consumers, and national security. At the center of the AI debate, he's shaping how and whether Congress acts.
Made it.
Welcome, Senator
Thank you very much.
Hawley,
Thank
to
you.
the Axios
Thank you for having me.
stage. Thank you so much to everyone for sticking with us today. We've got Senator Hawley here to talk all things AI, big tech. And I want to start by asking you about the news of the day, which is the liability decision in the landmark Los Angeles case where Meta and YouTube were found liable for some of their product design. What is your reaction?
Huge verdict, hugely significant. This follows the New Mexico case yesterday and the jury verdict there. I think the jury in Los Angeles is currently deliberating, and maybe you all can check your phones after this to find out if they've come back with a damages award yet. But they're going into the damages phase now. I mean, this is a big deal. I mean, this is a huge deal. These are the first times that we've had these social media companies be found liable by juries for the design of their platforms. This was a very significant case brought against Meta, brought against Google, involving also Snapchat and TikTok. And I think to have a jury find them liable, two juries now, find these companies liable twice back-to-back in different states is a huge deal. And I hope it will be a wake-up call to Congress. I mean, here you've had jurors, 12 just ordinary folks in two different states who said, we need to do something about these social media companies. Where's Congress? Like, what's Congress doing with its time? It's time for Congress to do something.
So in the White House AI framework that just came out, which we'll have to talk more about, part of it is children's safety. They want to focus on children's safety and make sure that is part of the bill. But it's sort of been a clear signal from the White House that they don't want to go quite as far as you and Senator Blackburn and a couple other folks on the Hill want to do with children's safety legislation. So what do these cases say to you about what Congress really needs to do, and can you get it done?
Well, I mean, I think the first thing we need to do is we need to pass legislation that would prevent AI chatbots from targeting minor children. I mean, if we can't agree on that, I don't know what we will be able to agree on. I've introduced legislation that's bipartisan and has broad bipartisan support. I mean, I think I've got a third of Congress, third of the Senate rather, is currently a co-sponsor, just about. And all it says is that the AI companies cannot target minors under the age of 18 with these chatbot companions. And additionally, they've got to disclose to everybody the fact that the chatbot is not human, that it's not a licensed therapist, it's not a licensed attorney. These are very basic safeguards, but they'll make a huge difference. I mean, I'll never forget talking to the parents of children whose lives were lost when a chatbot suggested that the child engaged first in self-harm and then ultimately tragically in suicide. I mean, this has got to stop, and I think our message to the companies has got to be no amount of profit justifies destroying children's lives. And by the way, that's what these juries just said. These juries just said no amount of profit justifies destroying a child's life. It'd be nice if the United States Congress maybe get on the same page.
So with the AI framework, we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet. What's your high-level reaction to what the White House put out?
Well, I think there's a lot to work with there. You were just asking about child safety. That is featured prominently in the framework. You know, the president called me about this back in December before his order came out, and certainly before this framework came out. And this was the one he said to me, you know, what are your issues with this? And I said on this issue broadly of AI, and I said, Mr. President, I think the biggest thing immediately is we've got to focus on child safety. And you can see this reflected in the framework. He said to me, I agree with that 100%. So I think there's a lot of room in that framework to build this out. Let's start with chatbot companions. Let's go on and give parents control over their children's data on social media. Every parent ought to be able to get their children's data back off of social media if they want that. I think we ought to give victims of social media, particularly those who've been exploited sexually and had those images, God forbid, put up on social media, they ought to have the right to get into court and have their day in court. So I think there's a menu of options there. I'd love to be as bold as we can, but let's at the very least, let's start with saying chatbot companions shouldn't be directed at minors, and let's build out those child safety protections. I think there's a lot that we can do there.
Do you support Senator Marsha Blackburn's Trump AI Act that has a lot of your bills in it,
I was going to say, I like all of that stuff. There's a lot of Hawley stuff in there. I like all of that. That's a really good stuff. I said to Marsha, I love those things. I think it's got a lot of great ideas in there, and I think, you know, some of the things that I would just highlight. We've got a bipartisan bill that is included in that framework that would require reports on jobs. Jobs created, jobs lost because of AI. I think that that's hugely significant. I think we should have the data. If Congress is going to legislate, we need to know what the data is related to job losses. We should do risk evaluation of AI. That's in the framework. I think that's very important. One of the most important pieces of legislation, though, I think, and this is referenced in the president's framework, is legislation that would protect consumers from having their electricity bills go up because of AI data centers. I can just tell you, when I go home, people are very, very concerned about their electricity bills going up, about losing access to utilities like water. We need to guarantee in the law federally that there will be no increase in electricity rates because of data centers. We should require these data centers to provide their own, it's essentially operate behind the grid to provide their own power source. The president has gotten some of these folks to do that voluntarily, which is great. We should write that into law. That would be tremendous help to consumers.
What do you think of the proposal from Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Ocasio-Cortez today about a moratorium on data centers altogether?
Well, what I think they're getting at there is the real concern that people have, and you can see it if you come to my state. I mean, listen, in the state of Missouri, I grew up in rural Missouri. You know, people on a Wednesday night do not have time to go out and sit at a zoning meeting for hours on end. They don't do that. However, if you go to my state right now, in gymnasiums and churches across the state, you will find people packing these places on a given Tuesday, Wednesday night and staying for hours. There was one in a small town in Missouri recently that went till 2:30 in the morning. Oof. This never happens. Why? Because they are concerned, scared to death that a data center is going to come in, drive up the cost of land, drive up the cost of electricity, drive up the cost of water. We ought to legislate on that. We ought to say we are not going to allow that to happen. I think Bernie's bill gets at that. And my view is that if we don't do something to guarantee no increases in electricity bills, no loss of access to water, if we don't do that, local residents are going to start saying no to all of these data centers. They're doing it already in Missouri. So I think we need to act.
So you're speaking a little bit to the sort of tension that's present in all of these debates, which is there's a lot of excitement about AI. This administration has been very welcoming of AI and wanting to sort of innovate at all costs. But when you're back home, you're hearing economic anxiety from voters. How does the Republican Party square that going forward, especially at a time when you might lose the House and maybe the Senate?
Well, I think we've got to make sure that, as with any technology, it's actually good for American workers. I mean, the way that you protect voters is you look at their priorities. And right now, they're saying really loud and clear, their priority is, we don't want to see our electricity bills go up. We should protect that. They're saying we don't want to see access to water and my utility bills going up. We should protect that. I mean, I think if we can say to these companies, you build all the data centers you want, but you got to protect consumers. You build all the stuff you want to do, but you have got to get the approval of local folks, and you've got to pay for it all yourself. I think if we do that, then you'll see local residents say, okay. But if it's just going to be, we're going to just hand out cash to these big corporations and not require them to do anything and let them run roughshod over voters, I can tell you, we will be punished for that. I mean, people are not going to put up with that. And I think if you want to be pro-worker, you got to start doing stuff for workers.
Preemption is the issue of the day here. When preemption was potentially going to be passed as part of the National Defense Bill last year, you were not in support of that. So now that there's a national AI framework, which will obviously include preemption, where do you stand on the issue?
Well, I think first of all, I want to say that the idea with the framework that's new, which is good, is actually calling on Congress not just to say no to a bunch of state laws, but to put down a federal standard. That's a very different thing. And I think it's important that we put in place federal law. I want to legislate federally. That's why I've introduced all these bills. So I think if we can protect child safety, if we can stop the data centers from sending up electricity rates, if we can make sure that states are able to continue to enforce their own zoning laws and so forth, which is carved out of the framework, then I think you've got the makings there of a national framework that could really work. Obviously, we've got to build that out, and there's a lot of work to do. I think any discussion about state laws, preempting state laws, can only happen in that context. And I'm encouraged that the framework carves out whole bunches of state laws, particularly the children's safety laws. Those should be allowed to remain in place no matter what. I don't want to tell a state that is, for instance, has laws banning deepfake porn that, oh no, sorry, you've got to rescind that. Why would we do that? I mean, we want to reward those states that are protecting kids, that are giving rights back to families. And I think we want to encourage these companies to innovate in a way that's actually good for consumers and workers.
So on the preemption issue, say we do get to federal preemption and there is a federal standard, but individual states still want to go further and protect their citizens more. Should they still have that right?
Well, sure. I mean, I think it depends on the area. The framework contemplates, the president's framework contemplates a variety of areas where states would not be preempted at all. And this is why we need to write this with extreme care. I mean, I think the framework is a great first step. I think there's a lot of building out there to do, and particularly when you talk about, okay, are we going to take the step of saying no to states on certain things? Then we just want to make sure that we've got that exactly right, that we've really thought through that, that we know what we're doing, and that, again, we are maximally protecting children, we are maximally protecting the rights of consumers, taxpayers. I mean, this ought to be our big focus. Protecting kids, protecting workers, protecting people's wallets. That ought to be what really drives us.
In the White House, advisor David Sachs has repeatedly said the idea is that parents should be empowered to sort of control what their kids see online. We don't want the federal government in charge of, what kids can see and do online. It should be up to individuals and families. Some would read that as not supporting the Senate version of COSA, thinking that some of these children's safety bills go too far, impede innovation. So how are you hoping to sort of square where there might be disagreements on just how far the kids' bill should go?
Yeah, I don't want to put words in his mouth. I would say that I think it's absolutely right to say that parents ought to be in control, and that means that the tech companies should not be in control. I mean, currently, the tech companies are in total control of kids' information. I mean, listen, I've got 3 kids at home, 3 small kids, a 13-year-old, an 11-year-old, and then my 5-year-old baby girl. And I want to keep them off of, I'll just be honest with you, I don't let any of them get online. They do not have social media. If they do, I don't know about it. So if you find out, would you please tell me?
We'll let you know.
Afterward. Yeah, I'd be like, have you seen this profile? But as far as I know, my kids don't have it. And that's because I'm scared to death of what they'll find online, and I don't have any control. I really don't. My kids don't even have phones or tablets, and despite that fact, they know more about my phone and tablet than I do. Yeah. I'm like, how do you know this? You don't even have these things. As a parent, I want control. I don't want the tech companies to have control. I want it. And I think that we've got to legislate with that in mind. It's got to be about how do we give parents control over their kids' data, control over who is contacting their children, control over what chatbots are saying. More power to parents ought to be our watchword.
And since I have you here, I wanted to ask about some antitrust matters.
Sure.
What worries you about the way big AI companies are consolidating and buying up other AI companies? And there's been reporting recently that suggests that the antitrust division at the Justice Department has had some controversy. The chief, Gail Slater, seems to have been pushed out. Are you worried about that? Are you worried about sort of pay for play in our antitrust agencies right now? And in general, how are you thinking about AI and competition?
Well, I think we always want more competition. The market works based on competition. So I'm a pro-competition guy, and that makes me, I think, an antitrust guy. I hope that whomever the president chooses to follow on Gail Slater will be committed to a strong antitrust agenda. You look at what this president did going back to his first term. Very committed to antitrust in a way that really surprised people. I hope that they will continue that legacy and choose a new antitrust chief who will be serious about this. But I think in general, we need more competition in the social media space. We need competition in the AI space. We want open, free, robust competition. That is what gets transparency for consumers. It's what protects consumers' rights. It's what keeps prices down and spurs innovation. So, listen, the Republican Party basically invented antitrust a little over a century ago. I think it's in my party's DNA, should be, and I'm very committed to it. Because I believe in markets, I believe in competition. That means I believe in antitrust enforcement. I hope we'll have more of it.
And what can we expect from you next in the AI space? And any new bills and anything getting marked up soon?
Well, hopefully we'll soon mark up the GUARD Act, which is the AI chatbot bill I've mentioned several times now. We've got so much sponsorship for this. We've got so much support from parents groups that I want to see the Judiciary Committee mark that up. I would imagine it would pass unanimously. I don't know who would be against it. And then I want to see action on the floor. I want to see us actually do something. I'll just come back to where we started with these jury verdicts. When you've got juries out there of everyday people saying, we have to do something about big tech, where has the United States Congress been? I tell you where it's been. They've been out there with their hand out to all of these tech companies saying, put some cash in here, put some green in this hand. And that's what's been going on, and therefore nothing's been done. You all know that's the truth. It's time that that changes. And I hope that these jurors, you know, if they can do their job, Congress can do its job. And we need to do it. We need to do it now.
Yeah, maybe it'll give them a little kick.
I hope so.
And with that, we are unfortunately out of time. Gonna have to leave it there. Thank you so much, Senator Hawley, for joining us today. And thank you all for joining us at the Axios AI Summit here in Washington, D.C. If you want to keep up with these conversations every day, which I'm guessing you do, you're all in the biz, from policy, business, breakthroughs, be sure to subscribe to the Axios AI Plus newsletter on our website. And if you want more information on our events, you could find that on our website as well. You could catch these full interviews and catch up on our YouTube page. And we will continue the AI Summit series on New York, June 3rd, San Francisco on December 3rd. Thank you all so much, and please join us for the reception.